This episode of Watch Out for Fireballs is brought to you by our patrons. If you go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv, you too can join them. Thank you. My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Cole Ross.
And you're listening to Watch Out for Fireballs. It is a Games Club podcast.
And this week we are talking about Tactics Ogre, Let Us Cling Together, which is a tactical RPG originally developed and published by Quest for the Super Famicom in 1995.
Yeah, one of the all-time great funny game titles. And surprised to find at the end of this game that there were ogres around. Mm-hmm. I think somebody mentions the Tactics Ogre. I could be misremembering that. But
is he just hanging around? Did you put it at the screen and say that's a Tactics Ogre?
He's eating chessboards.
Yeah.
So we're talking about that, but we're basically talking about the remake of it, which is a port/remake, a very substantial remake.
Yes.
For the PSP, subtitled Let Us Cling Together.
Mm-hmm.
So big translation changes, big quality of life changes, a lot of rebalancing, a lot of just straight up new content, new theming. You know, I watched the Super Nintendo version this morning for the first time to kind of check out and see what it was like, and it's very different.
Yes. I was really surprised. So I guess in my head, I thought that all of these Tactics Ogre games were different. So I didn't realize that there was something kind of approaching a Final Fantasy Tactics on the, what is effectively the SNES. So when I looked at the footage of it, like, it was fucking remarkable is what it was.
It looks the same.
Mm-hmm.
And the music is also
really good.
Really, it's got that Final Fantasy Tactics music, style music, on the SNES. It's pretty neat.
Yeah.
To see, it sounds like it's a much more tedious play experience.
Yeah.
And, before, as just kind of setting things up, like, we have some caveats for the next couple episodes. About this. In general, this is a two-parter. But one of the things is that, like, the actual experience of this, which I enjoyed on the balance, I also found a little tedious. Mm-hmm. And this is like the de-tedious version. So I don't think I'm ever going to go back and play the Super Nintendo version.
No. I don't know if any fans would say, oh, you absolutely have to. It's the best experience.
There are people who stand for there's a PlayStation version as well that may have only come to Japan.
No, it came to America. Yeah.
Oh, that one. Yeah. There's people who like the PlayStation version as opposed to the PSP port.
Right.
Who say that this one has problems. So there are people who go for that middle version. But even this kind of updated quality of life one, like, my understanding of the Super Nintendo one is you have to basically do like fake training battles. Every battle.
Wow.
Essentially.
Yeah.
And then they got rid of that for the PSP version.
Right.
So let's get our other caveats out of the way.
Yeah, let's do that.
Caveat town.
Caveat town, just to let people know. So like we said, this is part one of a two-parter. We're going to do the generalities, and we're going to do chapter 1. After that, the game gets a little bit buck wild in terms of sending you down different lines. Additionally, the game is incredibly big. We are not going to be able to cover this comprehensively.
Yeah, there's an element of this that is like, is the style of the genre in a weird way, like the Disgaea games where like it's just kind of unlimited content. There's an element of that to this game as well, which I was surprised by. I didn't expect that, but the side quests in this, as opposed to being like one or two battles, tend to be these gigantic multi-level dungeons.
Yeah.
And there's also a post-story kind of coda thing that I might fuck around with. To put this into perspective in terms of like, just full transparency in terms of network work. and such. I did three run-ups of this game because I fucked myself into problems.
Yeah.
With it. And then, my final play clock with playing on an emulator where I could fast forward certain parts, was 70 hours. And then I imagine with the 2 run-ups before that, which were pretty significant, it's about how long I played. I originally had kind of grand plans to go back and do, to be more completionist, to do the coda, to do the other paths and such. And I just those are Baldur's Gate 2 figures. Like those are huge numbers of hours, for this. And I just, as much as I enjoy this on the balance, there's not enough variety in the battles, of this to make that sound like a appealing proposition to me, even though I enjoy the story and the skeleton of this is strong.
Yeah. Lots of folks have made this their forever game, going back through and doing different kind of runs, things like that. There are mods that are available, for this that people asked us if we were going to do. We're kind of taking the most basic approach to this. So if you're the kind of person who feels like the hair on the back of your neck will stand up if we miss a recruitment or if we misstate a particular detail, understand that we are coming up. This is both of our first times playing it. And even though we're both putting in 50 plus hours, that is a drop in the bucket compared to like what normally is thrown into this. We're tourists.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like what I brought to this, in terms of 70 hours, it's a lot of hours, man. Like I don't feel like in any way that I did not put in the time for this. It just was not, this just didn't end up grabbing me as the way it would have if I had played it, definitely on the Super Nintendo or even probably when it came out on PSP.
Yeah.
It like an unlimited free time summer. This could have been an awesome, forever, kind of thing where I just went and got everything. Like I've done all the side quests in Final Fantasy Tactics, Like I've played through that with mods, like that kind of thing. It just didn't grab me the same way, and it's more demanding. Like it is longer than those games. Like when I mentioned Disgaea, I was thinking about Disgaea in relation to this because there aren't that many tactics games like this, and I really wish I liked those more.
Yeah. Because the flavor in that is poison, but the play is actually pretty good. Yeah.
The play is good, but they also have this problem of extreme maximalism,
right,
to them, where it's you can go through the basic game and that's fine, and then you want to do the alternate stuff, and you have to do the 100 level dungeons that are part of your sword to get your sword to +1 and shit. That kind of stuff, I like it. I like that it exists. It's optional. I'm never really going to engage with it though, and I couldn't shake the feeling from Let Us Cling Together that I was somehow enjoying it wrong.
Yeah.
Or that I was doing it as this would, if I had engaged with those systems a little deeper, then this would grab me. I kept getting Lucy in the football a little bit.
Yeah.
About this because I had really high expectations.
Yeah.
Extremely unfairly high expectations for this game.
Right.
That were not fair to a Super Nintendo port.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Well, both of us love Final Fantasy Tactics. I will cede to you that you love it more than I do, but it's, up there. It's one of my favorite games. Yeah.
No need to compete.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. It's up there. It's for a long time been my Desert Island game answer because it is, I feel like it's endlessly kind of challenge runnable and really deep and everything. And I was very excited with the idea of getting another one of those, from Matsuno. The idea of it's just going to basically be Final Fantasy Tactics again, a real sequel, unlike those advanced games, which I don't care for that much. And it's not. It is a port of a Super Nintendo game. It is a first draft of that game, and there are neat things it does that I think are really cool.
Yeah.
But it never Final Fantasy Tactics to me the way I needed it to.
Yeah.
To do all this shit.
We should probably throw that on the caveat pile, which is, people who like this game, they sometimes fight it against Final Fantasy Tactics as though they're Pokemon, We are coming in this primarily from, the point of experience of having played and really enjoyed and internalized a lot of Final Fantasy Tactics and its systems. We're kind of assuming a viewer who has followed along with the show knows that we have covered Final Fantasy Tactics before, knows what that's about. And we're going to talk about it from that perspective because that's the comparison that draws what Tactics Ogre is doing specifically into the sharpest relief for us.
Yeah, for us personally, it doesn't have to. We understand how causality works. Like we understand this game first, so I'm not giving Final Fantasy Tactics any credit for like being the first man on the moon for the shit. I have no disdain for people who prefer this. There are things that this does better than Final Fantasy. Even though I think it is overall, I think it is a weaker game. I think there are things it does better that are interesting, and I would love to have them like fused together as a real Final Fantasy Tactics 2.
Yes.
You know, Final Fantasy Tactics Ogre. You know, and just like portmanteau them shits into a supreme game.
Take the best parts of all and put them together. I can't think of anything more for the Don't Yell at Us segment.
Yeah, it's not even like I'm not worried about being yelled at because I imagine most people's experience is they don't know what the fuck this is. You know, it's pretty obscure. It's more that I had this feeling of guilt of like not being a good enough fan of this genre and creator.
Right.
During it, you know, that I'm trying to like grapple with, which is a dumb and unhealthy impulse. But you know, what am I?
Matsuno cannot fail. He can only be failed. Okay.
Yeah, what am I but a collection of dumb impulses, you know, dumb and unhealthy impulses.
Yes.
So, the basic premise of this is you play as a character named Denim Pavel, and you are leading this liberation kind of military force caught in the middle of this continent-spanning struggle during a succession crisis.
Right. You're caught between two different empires and their proxy warriors and forces and all of the civilians who are also rising up. And it is classic Matsuno style stuff.
Yes.
As we alluded to, you know, this plays similarly to Final Fantasy Tactics, which is actually a spiritual successor to this game. Like we said, we're going to use that as a point of comparison. But understand when we say that, you're controlling a squad of units on this isometric grid. You're fighting against enemy units and attempting to accomplish your mission objectives while losing as few of your people as possible.
Yep, extremely D&D 3.5.
Yes.
Like you get a move and an action, and then also like a feat.
Yeah.
You know? So if you play D&D, I always have secretly thought Final Fantasy Tactics was a great D&D adaptation kind of thing. So there are a couple of immediately noticeable differences. We're probably not going to catch all of these, and because there are different versions, we're going to talk about the differences between Final Fantasy Tactics, but we understand these are also different in the PlayStation and Super Nintendo version. So something that's noticeable and notable is that you cannot rotate the maps.
Right.
You instead can look at them from overhead, which is nice. But you cannot rotate them, which is a counterintuitive thing. What makes a bigger difference in the kind of the general feel and pacing of the game is that there are way more units on each side.
Right.
Frequently you are fielding 12 units versus 14 to 15 units against the enemy side, which will also replenish.
Yeah. No, either they'll get back up if they're undead, or they will summon in new ones, things like that. The battles in this feel substantially longer as a result.
And there are actually like a lot of things that contribute to that. Like,
yes,
we're gonna do the watch out for fireballs thing where we spend a lot of time in this generality section. So later we can say it's a Tactics Ogre-esque battle.
Right.
You know, so in terms of like battle generalities and such, huge numbers, you start further away.
No.
From the enemy, and I have a fairly recent Final Fantasy Tactics playthrough under my belt.
Yeah, you did one for the blog or a show, right?
No, just for funzos.
Just for funzos? No, you did a Duckfeed Presents talking about it. I remember that.
Oh, I don't.
Oh, okay.
So maybe I did record about it, but I thought I just did it for fun. But you start further away. You oftentimes start, every once in a while in Final Fantasy Tactics, you would start at the bottom of a hill and the enemy would start at the top. That feels like the default to me in Tactics Ogre.
Yeah.
So you're often at a disadvantage. And then perhaps the biggest difference, and you may have this as a later note, but just in terms of how battles are structured that I want to mention, because it makes a really huge difference, is as opposed to occasional battles where you have to kill a leader character, and most battles being you have to clear the map, it is almost every battle is kill the leader.
Yes.
And this also makes a huge difference in terms of pacing and how the battles feel of this, where you are kind of, there's reasons to kill the rabble, but you're kind of wasting your time when you're not just going for the alpha strike. of things, and it totally changes how you play. Like there are a lot of like different defensive moves and defensive spells and such that I did not end up using very much because the most effective strategy was just like rush the dude.
Yeah. Don't give them time to set up their own advantage using those skills.
Yeah, just go for the guy. And battles, though they would be shorter than Final Fantasy Tactics if they weren't 1,000 people long and you didn't start a mile away from the opponent.
Yeah. So, think about those things combining together. You are downhill oftentimes from a large force. The leader unit is leading from behind. And oftentimes they are set up in such a way that you have to get through a bottleneck to get to them. And yeah, like that is, that accounts for a good number of the maps. So even if you are going for a decapitation, you still have to deal with a lot of the rabble in order to make that happen.
Yeah. So this ended up being a thing that had huge tendrils, in terms of changing my strategy, because in playing Final Fantasy Tactics, a winning strategy is to kind of move slowly and carefully and take enemies out one by one. And there are multiple things in this game that kind of prevent you from doing that. The reinforcements being the biggest one, but also just the fact that it is enemies are like far apart, or like you're far from the enemy, but you're also clumped together.
Yeah.
Like it's really hard to draw an enemy. You tend to draw all of them. This is a long-winded way of me trying to articulate the reason why I think that these encounters are designed worse.
Yeah.
Than the FFT ones. And I just, there's reasons behind it. It's not just a feeling, and I want to get those out there.
Yeah. They're designed for more of a rigor and to feel like more of a stalemate, as opposed to, something where a particularly canny amount of preparation, coming into a battle with a particular skill or a particular combination of classes, feels like it would immediately break that when you went into Final Fantasy Tactics. A similar battle there. Similarly, like at the low level, and even I haven't beaten this. I'm in the middle of chapter 3 right now. Gary, you have beaten it. It kind of feels like you're always at like a numerical or statistical disadvantage. I'm trying to, and I am constantly doing detective work to figure out why my attacks do less damage to them than their attacks do to me, and also why they have more HP. Like it feels like taking down, the time to kill for any individual unit involves like using most of the people on my side in order to take them out. And I've tried any number of combinations of skills and weapons and, keeping things upgraded. So I think that time to kill is also a really big factor here.
Yeah. Enemies are heartier. There are more of them. Essentially, like, getting down into the base strategy, the way that I circumvented that, and the name of the game, in this game that ended up being very different than Final Fantasy Tactics, was Charm, Sleep, and Petrify.
Debuffs, man. Yeah.
Not even deep, like taking people out of the action.
Yeah.
Like a debuff was good, like lowering somebody's strength, but that had like, I have an 80% chance to petrify this sucker. Like, why wouldn't, and petrify 4 of them. So it just became about kind of juggling, which, so I would still have most of my guy, it would take a while to wear somebody down, but I would try to take as many of their pieces off the board temporarily.
Right.
As I could, through that, and then just charm. I ended up ending this game, we'll talk about the class system, which I have a lot of nitpicks with, but I ended up ending this with 3 wizards, all of which who could cast charm in my main party. So just like, it was just turn the tide. Like, use that against them. Like, use the fact that they are stronger and do more damage than me against them. And that's what ended up making it work.
That sense of disadvantage also is not necessarily a product of under leveling, because the enemies do scale with you as it goes.
There's a way to keep even further ahead of that curve, 2 ways, either through crafting or through like recruiting and stealing weapons from people. Both systems I engage with a bit, but I have nitpicks with, and this is going to be a nitpick thing, and I just want to justify my feeling that this is not as good as Final Fantasy Tactics. Like, there are concrete reasons. It is not just whichever one you play first you like. There is a really complicated initiative system in this game. Your characters have a value called WT, and your WT is influenced by what armor you're wearing and what your agility score is and what actions you take. So this thing counts down to 0. Once it gets to 0, you get to move, and then depending on what you did, it resets to a certain degree. So there's an advantage to, it's not like, hey, I may as well throw a rock because I may as well throw a rock. No, don't throw that rock because your next turn will come up sooner. And if you don't do anything, your next turn will come up quite a bit sooner. I think this system is great. I think this is really cool. It incentivizes light armor in a way that has never been incentivized in tactics stuff before. This is good.
Yeah.
To me.
I really enjoy gaming this. Like the second that I realized that I was making a decision to just wait for a quicker turn to come around, it made me think about battles in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And you can stop and check the order that everything is happening. There's no wait or anything like that. So there's no skills that take a second to go. Everything fires at once.
Yeah.
Which means that you don't have to deal with the aim problem in Final Fantasy Tactics where and you can check this order whenever you like.
It's like
on the screen.
You've got icons down at the bottom that are color coded showing kind of the running order, kind of like Final Fantasy X or Child of Light, any of those.
Yeah, it's really good. Like this is a really good system.
Yeah. Like we said, you can move and act in any particular order. This is not something like, like XCOM, that will, penalize you if you attack first, things like that. So you have a good amount of, flexibility, as it goes. Or, just choose to wait. You can do that as well. The MP and TP system is really interesting and counterintuitive, and I found myself actually kind of liking it a lot. So what happens is you start out with 0 MP, and 0 TP, TP being like what, technical points, something like
Tactics
that?
Points.
Tactics points. There we go. So for most characters, that are not magic, like if they're using kind of like a weapon skill, a special kind of attack, or even like recruit and things like that. All of those have a TP point associated with them. You start at 0 at the beginning of a battle, and that raises with over the course of your turns or with each successful action in terms of TP. So you're either using instead of using your recovery items later on in the battle to recover from a deficit, using one of those early on as an action will let you jump the curve and use more powerful stuff against the enemy if they are just waiting for that to come up naturally.
Yeah. So TP is kind of like limit break.
Yeah.
Meter almost it goes up a little bit each turn, but it mostly goes up from hitting and being hit. Whereas MP goes up at a steady rate, and you have an item that will increase MP, but if there's one that increases TP, I didn't see it. There's a billion items in this game.
And some of them are pretty misleadingly named, actually.
Yeah. Like a million items, a million status effects, a different item for each of those status effects. So these ended up being, I thought this was interesting as well. The MP a little bit less so because the fact that I was starting so far away from the enemy just meant, on my first turn, I just eat a magic leaf and get my MP up. It didn't feel strategic. It just felt like part of the order of operations.
Yeah, it just felt de rigueur.
The TP part though is interesting because it kind of feels like a sudden death mechanic almost. Everybody is going up, everybody's TP is going up, and eventually you and your opponent are going to start being able to do much more hard hitting moves. It kind of lends itself to this escalation feeling that I think is pretty neat.
Yeah, and that culminates in these finishing moves that you can do, which are pretty devastating. It changes depending on the class that a person has. It usually uses 100 plus
the
TP.
Weapon, I think.
The weapon, okay, actually. There we go.
Yeah, and it's always 100, and it uses all of it. So you have to have 100 minimum, but it wipes out your TP, and a lot of the skills scale with how much TP you end up using.
Yeah.
So these are, as you mentioned, these are big weapons. The way that I would love to find somewhere like a real deep dive on the math and damage resistance of enemies. Like the end boss of this game, I could only really damage them with finishing moves. I could do them a little bit with other things, but I was just like, man, what is is this some Dragon's Dogma broken, armor resistance kind of stuff? The math behind it is goofy. But it's nice when you get to that 100 points, and you get to, take a unit off the field like a lot of the time. Not always, but it ends up, but they're going to do that against you as well.
Right.
So, there's more to the battle system, which that will trickle out over these couple episodes. It's very complicated. And you generally, in order to hit, you want to flank and do back shots. Height advantage is very important, especially for ranged characters. And then focusing fire is hugely important, even though, again, that is undercut by the fact that many battles feature reinforcements.
Yes.
So you do have to focus fire if you want to take anybody off the board. I ended up finding it much more effective to temporarily take them off the board and then go for that decapitation.
Yes. Yeah. This is a little bit undercut by the presence of guest party members who act entirely on their own. You can do a very limited amount of AI customization for your own characters. I never found a way to do this with guest party members. The only way I found to direct what they could and could not do was to just change the skills and items they had equipped.
Yeah, and you can't change their job.
Right.
They won't do it. They're I actually love the little message. Actually, I can take care of myself, because it's a very funny thing to be you're a princess now. Hold up. I get a say in this. Yeah. How do you feel about, being a beast trainer? Not great.
No.
I'd prefer not, and,
I was born a rune fencer and I'm going to die a rune fencer many, many times.
My family have always been rune fencers. I thought you were a cleric. No, I'm a priest. Get it fucking right. They will fight back on that. And it means, guest characters are really weird because I never quite determined, typically when they die, there's no penalty. They just leave the battle.
Right.
And I could never tell how meaningfully they were contributing to my unit cap.
Yeah.
Because your unit cap vacillates what feels extremely arbitrarily.
Yeah, it'll go from as low as 6 to as high as 12 for no reason. Different caps on the same map. It almost felt like.
Yeah. If you go back and do a random encounter in a map, it'll be different. So I was I don't like guests because they're taking up slots, but they don't take up slots. There's a battle at some point in the chaos route where I think you field all 12 units and you have a guest.
Yeah.
So it's just man, they're fucking weird. They don't do what you want them to do, at all.
Look at you, Cachua.
They're not super helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cachua is not great, in terms of mechanics of this.
Yeah.
So the way that all characters work, including your guest, is that they have different classes. You can't assign your guest classes, but you can assign your characters classes. And this determines which skills they have access to and what gear they can equip. And we're going to camp out here for a while because this is a really big difference in Final Fantasy Tactics and is a really big part of the game.
Yes.
Really different than how Final Fantasy Tactics works. Advantages and disadvantages to that, in my opinion. And this is what threw me and took me the longest to get used to.
Right. So again, drawing comparisons to Final Fantasy Tactics. Well, let's start the big one here. Not having the libretto of Final Fantasy theming does make a big difference for this.
Yes. What is a rune fencer?
Don't know.
I say, and the female form of the rune fencer is a Valkyrie.
Right.
What does that mean? A dragoon in this means something totally different. You get the same name, but it doesn't mean what a Final Fantasy version is.
Yeah, this is not a problem inherent to this game. It is bad. It does not feel fair to hold it against that, but it is a problem when you are moving from one to the other, and illustrates kind of how important that understanding what terms meant in that particular world. That was pretty important, knowing that difference. Yeah.
I missed it a lot. And see also the Chocobo Dungeon
right
game, which took a Final Fantasy skin and put it on roguelikes. And doing that kind of libretto is really important because it's I know what a Faraga is.
Right.
I inherently know that. There's things I will never learn in my life. There are lovers who I will forget because that space in my brain is dedicated to knowing that Faraga is better than Ferrara. And both of those are nonsense words.
Yep. Faraga is the boss. Yeah.
Yeah, Frog. That one's the big one.
Yeah.
You know, Flair is better. Those words don't mean anything.
Right.
But I just have that in my brain instead of more useful things. Yeah. And now I have this whole other set of my brain where I know what the difference is between Meteor Storm and like Dark Bullet or whatever. Because I had to learn a whole new thing.
Yeah, but understand we're not holding this against the game. It was part of our growing pains getting into this and, you know, learning the particular ways that Tactics Ogre uses particular words that we may have associated different meanings with. More substantially, while in Final Fantasy Tactics, you unlocked classes by gaining levels in kind of more basic classes. You know,
like
starting
a tech tree.
Yeah, it's like a tech tree. You know, starting with you know, your squire and your chemist, and branching out you know, from, you know, physical and ranged from there. Here, that is not the case. It is not a tech tree. There are no dependencies. Instead, you find class marks, or class writs. I forget which one it's called.
Marks.
They're marks. Yeah. Yes.
And there are dependencies, but they're not, character build dependent. They're alignment dependent.
Yes.
But there's no class thing. So the idea is, as soon as, either you find like a Beastmaster or a Beast Tamer, class mark, either in the wild or from a battle or from like recruiting,
or like a store,
one of those characters, store or anything like that, then you now can turn a character. But that is a resource. That's a consumable.
Yeah.
To do that, for one. And for two, this also, like, I understand why someone might prefer this because it's much more intuitive. Like, I have the card, I can make the class.
Yeah.
But eliminating the relationship between those classes ended up being something that was really counterintuitive to me.
Yeah.
Like, in FFT, like, there was something where it's like, okay, a mage then leads into a more advanced, complicated form of mage,
or a more specialized one, like going from a mage to a time mage, right? Like you're going from doing direct damage to actually manipulating the flow of battle.
You know, or going to an oracle, you know, and doing debuffs and such. And it felt like a way that a character might learn. Like, I just, you know, can create fire. It's a very basic spell, and then I learn these more complicated tricks.
Yeah.
Here you're kind of jumping all over the place. So like, you don't have to remember like, oh, it's you know, you don't have to put in your time as an archer,
right?
Your time as a thief or whatever.
Yeah.
This way, but it ended up it contributed to these classes having no meaning to me. You know, and not really understanding, not just because I didn't have Final Fantasy Tactics to compare them to, but because they're just words. It's like it became kind of a noun soup thing.
Yeah.
With Valkyries and Holy Knights and priest versus clerics. And stuff like that.
And I think that has not helped. That sense of kind of like sameness across them has not helped by the fact that the majority of the skills that you can get are common between all of the classes.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Like, it is so hard to tell what the unique selling point of a class is.
Right.
In this game, from glancing at it or even from changing into it, because most of the skills are shared, as you mentioned. Your advanced skills will not show up even to purchase.
Right.
Until like there's like two tiers. There's like it appears on your list and then you can buy it.
Yeah, like you have to be within like 3 or 5 levels of the prerequisite to see that it's coming down the pike. Yeah.
So, like, if I switch to a Beast Tamer, I have no idea what is good about this. I can look at the stats, but I don't know if they later get, like, a really cool skill.
Yeah.
I have no idea. Whereas opposed to the whole palette being really different in the support skills in FFT, where, like, oh, the Oracle, like, the magic that the Oracle does is just not shared by anybody. Sometimes you get some of the same effects. But these are all unique spells to that class. They're the only class that can do it. Now I understand that.
Yeah.
You know? And this was a big contributing factor to my number one kind of bugbear, with this, is that I, used a lot of the, opening classes forever because classes level together. Which means that, like, you know, when you have so the way it works is the more of a specific class you bring into battle, the more XP that class gets.
Right.
So if you bring a knight into battle, you know, it gets so much XP. If you bring 2 knights into battle, it gets more XP. And then every time you create a knight, it will be that level.
Right.
That's cool. What is not cool though, and what powerfully discouraged me from having a cool variety of moves in my team was the fact that characters start at level 1.
Right.
Or classes rather. And I had no idea what they would be like when they were level 10 or level 15 or 20. I couldn't figure out their unique selling point. And it is, because it relates to the job thing, it's worth saying here, even though it plays into the pace. This game is so grindy. Like, if you want to, like, you get a new class, you want to play with it. Not only do you not get a chance to see what it will do right away, it takes forever for like a new class to become viable. Yeah.
When you take them into a battle, and I found myself wanting to take them into a random battle as opposed to kind of gambling them on a story battle, because story battles are tougher.
It's a hard game too. Yeah. So being down a character just for training is a big deal.
Yeah. So, end up taking them into a random battle and such. And because of the way experience points and level, level totals work, the first few will be pretty quick, but eventually as they get closer to the curve, they're going to still be substantially lagging behind, everybody else, as it goes. Yeah. There are a few ways that you can manage it, but it still has you doing many, many more fights, either down a person or, additionally with, this character that you're training up. And it really discourages and kind of takes a lot of the joy out of unlocking a new class, which should be a really, really, good, important, like big moment. Like, oh my God, whole new possibilities are open for me. You just didn't feel that when it happened here.
Yeah. I took zero joy. Once I figured this out, it basically, and we've done Final Fantasy Tactics and Final Fantasy V.
Yes.
On the show. And like those, I'm not a big Final Fantasy V fan, but it was real fun to get new classes.
Yeah.
In that. And
you got a bunch of them at once and
Yeah, it was neat. Here it just, the experience is like all my guys are level 8. I've unlocked a level 1 class. That character, the first time I battle with them, they maybe get up to level 3 or something.
Yeah.
Level 3 or 4. And then it slows down to a crawl. And the biggest, thing, so all these things, we're kind of all over the place because these things tie into each other.
Yeah, no.
It wouldn't be that big a deal, for the character to be low leveled if they could just use the equipment that's for that class.
Yeah.
But they level gate equipment as well.
Yeah.
So your character, you're already kind of under the gun in terms of efficacy of damage. I've got a beast tamer. I throw my beast tamer out there. He can only use like a dagger or a short bow, or what have you. He can only use the worst weapons and armor. So he dies in like 1 or 2 hits. He cannot damage the enemy. Like,
right.
Near the mid game of this, when I was around like level 12 or 13, when I was that was the last time I was trying to train people up.
Right.
They would not do more than 1 damage to the enemy.
If they hit. Yeah,
they would miss all the time. So I'm like, okay, this guy's worthless. Like it's just a tax, person tax to train them. So then I was like, how long will that take?
Yeah.
And the answer is like 10 battles to get them up to the level of the rest of your crew.
Yeah. 10 battles when a chapter is like 15 battles.
Yeah, it's silly. This is a silly system. And the way around it feels so obvious, which is just make new classes start at an average of all your classes. Or untie equipment. Like no level restrictions for equipment. Just do that with shops, like they become available.
Yeah.
At a certain point, but like a rune fencer can always equip every rapier weapon. Every longsword period.
Yes.
And, so that way if I have a level 1 rune fencer, he's not going to have very many abilities.
Yeah.
And the abilities tie into stats as well. Like we'll have to talk about that at some point too. This is connected. I'm like Charlie at the board. But so it's like not only, he's not going to have all the skills, but he can at least just be like a fighter.
Right.
And that's what happens again in Final Fantasy Tactics. Like I have created a new Oracle. The Oracle does not have a lot of spells, but they'll always start out with enough JP to learn their bread and butter spell.
Yeah.
So this Oracle can blind people at a distance, but they can use the rods and robes that everyone else can use to be as durable and martially effective as every other member of my party.
Yeah. Additionally, with the way the job system worked, you could bring over a secondary skill that they may have trained up in.
That's 100.
Yeah.
Yep. And here there's a little bit of that. Like you can, but there's nothing that indicates it. Like instead of having a main skill and a secondary skill, you just have at the end 10 skill slots that are just open. Some skills, so like a ninja can equip some of the knight skills, but I couldn't find anything in game that told me what they were. I guess like when you hold a square and press over, you get all those symbols, but I didn't recognize all the classes just by the icons. So that was a little bit difficult. So there is a way of kind of cross-classing and doing multi-classing like that, but it doesn't, it's not very freeform.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like you're just kind of free to say like, oh, I want to make a healer who fires bows. And you can sometimes do that, but it's really hard to tell that you can do it.
Right.
In this.
Yeah. So charting a path for any of your individual characters ends up being something that you do with a dearth of information unless you are relying on outside sources. I got the Brady Games strategy guide for this several months ago, actually, when I was looking at like how to plan this game out, because information about specifically what each chapter entails is pretty hard to find. And now that I'm playing the game, I know why that is. And that's pretty useful, but it's a lot of, very small type tables, that are available here. It's a very complex game, Yep. So there's that class, issue where everything levels together. Change what you can equip. When an enemy, so if you send a knight into battle, the knight class will get a certain amount of XP. You also get skill points. This is based on your actions. Yes.
So this is the only thing tugging you in the direction of doing more fights before you decapitate the leader of a thing, is the more things you do, the more skill points you'll get. This is the only reason why you'd throw a rock.
Right.
If you want to do rock training.
Either that or to build up TP for a particular character. Yeah.
Yeah. You can hit somebody with a rock to get them closer to a limit break. Like get to break out of the cell kind of thing. These things are used to buy skills and then also to buy skill slots. So you start off with only a couple of skill slots, and the skills, are many of which are common. They really vary, and a lot of them are things that I feel like should be class markers.
Yeah.
Should just be part of the class. So things like weapon proficiency.
Yeah.
Is a skill. If you want, you can use a hammer if you're a knight. If you want to be okay at it, you want to have the hammer proficiency. And then also a host of passive skills that increase your 2-hit and damage.
Yeah. True strike, damage equipments or damage enhancements. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then there are like bonuses against particular kinds of targets, which leads to, one of the first skills you end up giving everybody being anatomy, because you primarily only fight humans.
Yeah. The beast stuff in this is really weird.
Yeah.
I feel my understanding is it's a much bigger and more important part of like the bonus stuff.
Yeah.
In the game, but as is, every battle has humans. So you may as well do anatomy for that bonus damage. And there is a little bit of, opportunity cost to that, because you do have a limited number of slots and everything takes a slot. So, not only these skills, not only, your finisher moves do not, those come from your weapon, but everything else does. And then, magic schools, of which there are many, are also each tied to a skill. Like take a skill slot to use them, and then also a skill slot to make them effective.
Right.
Like, putting your affiliation or whatever for dark.
Right. Yeah. So, we talk about magic schools. That's primarily, by element. So divine, dark, and then fire, wind, ice. Any number of those there. My understanding is that the only one of those schools of magic that is like really bad is water. And within each of these, there was very little like, oh, I need to pick the right element to do the most damage to the enemy. What ended up being the case was like individual, schools of magic or elements had different buffs and debuffs and, status effects associated with them.
Yeah. Afflictions.
Yeah.
And such. Yeah, this actually reminds me a lot of how I approach Magic and Divinity Original Sin 2.
Yeah.
Which is that my mages would choose like 2 elements to be a specialist in. And then would do that. So like you're not making a mage who just does all magic. You're making a lightning fire mage.
Yes.
And a lot of those things are just direct damage of various shapes and intensities. There's direct magic that just appears where the enemy is, and then there's one that's a projectile. Mm-hmm. So your units can get in the way. So there's lots of that, and then there's various statuses, and these tend to actually overlap between things, but different elements tend to be better at them. Mm-hmm. So, for example, in the dark element, you can petrify a single enemy, but in the earth element, you can petrify a group. Mm-hmm. You know, in the dark element, you can put one enemy to sleep, but in the air element, you can put to sleep a group.
Yes.
So you basically have to choose, you know, you're going to get all these debuffs and status afflictions, basically. You're just going to choose which ones you want to concentrate on. Mm-hmm. And engaging with this and these characters ended up being some of my most effective and like most fun that I had. Yeah. I do like that magic system in this. I like how many spells there are. Mm-hmm. I like how varied they are.
Yeah. And I really like how you learn the spells too. The fact that you either pick up or buy these arcana, and the fact that everybody can use them in battle. They're scrolls, like items. Exactly. Yeah. And like, you know, when you use it, like that will both affect, you know, it'll cast the spell, but also, teach that to the character who uses it. So like using them in the menu between battles ended up being kind of a waste.
Yeah. And the only reason why you would ever do that is to not fiddle with it.
Yeah.
Like, there were a lot of suboptimal things I did in this game in order to fiddle less.
Yeah.
You know, and that was one of them. That scroll thing is actually really huge though, because it's still dependent on your stats.
Right.
So like your warrior is maybe not going to be great at casting a lightning bolt, but for spells that are just kind of, binary, they're really great, specifically exorcism, which ended up being a huge pain in the dick.
Oh my God.
In this game. And, just having a bunch of, you know, grinding enough to have a bunch of money to have a bunch of exorcism scrolls, ended up being very useful.
Yeah. Talking about like classes and base stats before we kind of move on to other things. You know, we talk about how, you know, as you find the class marks, you can freely move from one to the other because there are not these dependencies outside of alignment. There still is a bit of a dependency though. There still is a way that your past choices can affect how effective you'll be in the future because the time that you spend as a particular class will affect your base stats. So like you cannot have a character spend the entire game as a knight and then switch them over to be a wizard and expect them to be as effective as somebody who has been leveling up magic classes the full time.
Yeah. And you don't know what would be the advantage of that because you may not be able to multitask.
Yes.
Or multi-class in this. So like staying in your lane really felt like the way to play this.
Yeah.
You know, my denim, you know, became a knight and died a knight. You know, it was a knight like basically the entire time. I'm sure that, you know, looking at there were classes with better stat growths and stuff like that. And I just didn't do the 10 levels to level them up.
Yeah.
One other thing that's just a really minor point, but I want to mention about magic before we moved on from magic totally is when I talk about the slow pace of this game, one of the more insidious things that contributes to that is that affliction magic can be multi-targeted but recovery of that never can.
Yeah, you're right. I never thought of that. Yeah.
An enemy can go up if your characters are grouped together. The enemy can come up and stun 5 of your enemies. Stun is an effect that makes you have a 50% chance of fumbling and not doing an action.
It's like paralysis in Pokemon. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. You can always move. You might do that. If you want to get rid of that, though, the white magic spell that gets rid of that only does it for one target. The items that get rid of it only do it for one target. So the enemy is essentially taken away either half your turns if you decide to roll with it and just risk losing, losing your action, or 5 actions from you. And same thing when you do it to them.
Right.
You are taking, so it just slows the pace way, way down. Like I can petrify 5 of your dudes and it's going to take you a turn for every one of them you want to unpetrify. You know, it's a really weird choice.
Yeah.
In this, there's no, Asuna. There's no panacea.
Right.
In terms of getting rid of all things either. So like, you have to keep this larder of items and spells to get rid of these specific things that are just huge in terms of action economy.
Yeah.
And cost.
Yeah, just to get your guys out of the penalty box. Yeah.
Yeah, like just a little move. Because most of the statuses, like stun isn't, stun and then like debuffs you can still move through. Poison obviously you can move through.
No.
But most of the things, so sleep, charm, petrify. What is the electricity one that just stops you from being able to act?
Oh, geez, I forget it. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't remember what that is. But there's a bunch of them that they basically take you out.
Yeah. That ends up being a real problem, especially because you end up being kind of bunched up. You can move through friendly units. However, it will lock you out of particular routes that you can move if, somebody is standing at the far end of somebody else's, move radius. Yeah.
Well, and your moves tend to be there are mobile units in this game can move 4.
Right.
And most enemies can move 3. Mm-hmm. So when you're fielding 12 units and you have 12 units, they have to start all together, bunched up. You don't have you have a 3x4 grid of them. The unit in the lower right cannot move anywhere left to the left, at all, because there are 3 units in the way and you can't land on the same spot.
Right.
It's really restrictive.
Yeah.
And this would not be as big a thing if you could move a little bit further.
Right.
There are move skills you can get. They're post level 20, so they're post game content. At the very last dungeon is when I started unlocking move skills for my characters who had been with me since the beginning. To get plus 1 move.
Yeah.
And that was just wild to me. There are items that do it as well, but I did not find them.
Right.
They also might be things that are in the post dungeons or whatever, or New Game Plus.
Yeah.
Yipes. Again, it's not everything connects though to just
and that speaks to its credit, right? It system integration is a thing that is generally very good, but it also causes, things that make a problem in one area to cascade out into other areas.
Yeah. Yeah. Specifically in terms of tedium and pacing with this game.
Yeah. Yeah. Death is handled differently here. So when an enemy falls, they will, if they're story important, they'll warp away. But if they're going to die, they either leave behind a sack of their gear, or a tarot card that will bump up the stats of whoever grabs it. So, think of the crystals in Final Fantasy Tactics, which would teach you skills. This is, stat bumps. Enemies.
It's also a consumable.
Yes.
So when you pick up that tarot card, you also get a limited use consumable of that tarot card.
Yeah. But yeah, enemies will swoop in and steal these. Every bag that is on the field will be kind of thrown into your total at the end, as long as an enemy doesn't take it.
Mm-hmm. And when we said important story enemies would just disappear, the battles almost always end when you do that decapitation and kill the leader. So the idea is, ideally, and we'll talk about recruitment at some point too.
Yeah.
Fuck.
It's a big game, man.
If you want to recruit, the way you do that is you kill everyone except for the leader and everything, which is difficult when, roughly a third of the battles they bring in reinforcements.
Mm-hmm.
So what else? So when you fall, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
When you fall, you have a little 3 count, as per Final Fantasy Tactics, where you can bring an enemy back. But if they get down to 0, they leave the battle. They go off to recover their wounds, and they can do this 3 times. They have 3 little hearts.
Yeah.
Those are their three lives. If they fall in their last time, then you have this thing called scavenge, where you can kind of learn their skills as a crystal. And people who are doing the New Game Plus alternate dungeons in this manipulate this kind of thing. So they recruit characters, kill them 3 times to scavenge their skills in order to get rare skills on characters or learn faster. Nothing about that sounds faster to me. I shudder to think about what the bonus dungeons of this are like if that's the kind of tactics that are required.
You should see the maps in this guide, man. It's really rough.
I think I'm all right. I think I might end up being okay with the 70 hours I put in this.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that is a weird system. It never happened. I never lost a unit permanently in the game, in part because of the chariot system.
Yeah, this is interesting.
This is yeah, I think this is great.
Yeah,
personally,
this makes so this is specific to the PSP version. This makes this port feel like it is specifically meant for really hardcore people who want to perform optimally to get to that post game content. because it feels like that's what you have to do in order to make sure that you get there with everything that you need. So what happens is, the game keeps a buffer of your 50 most recent turns. And anytime you're in control of one of your units, you can just press your shoulder button and kind of like roll back the timeline to like any previous turn. So you can undo, kind of bad decisions that you may have made. The 50 turn limit, it also takes into account enemy turns. So you're not going back like to the beginning of the battle. But this is enough to make it be like, okay, well, yeah, that totally didn't work when I attacked that guy. This move would have been better spent getting in position to like lure this other person out. So you're kind of like, this has save scumming built into it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing I like about it. Like basically anything that makes something I could do, like that's a little bit easier, I think is generally good.
Yeah.
So you can abuse this to the degree that you want. You can do it when you miss, if you want. Like I missed an attack, I'd rather do something different with that action.
Yeah.
Which is functionally not different than you quick saving. And trying it again, which is something that you were allowed to do in Final Fantasy Tactics, even on the PlayStation. It took a separate memory slot or whatever to do in-battle saves, but different memory card, but you could do that. I think this is really powerful and ends up being really good during some of the later maps where there's instant death. There are ways to fall off the map.
Yeah, the cliffs.
Yeah, and that never felt good. And I was just like, well, fuck that. I'm not going to just lose this guy. I will rewind this.
Yeah.
I think this is very good.
Yeah, that's very kind.
Yeah. There's some other kind of factors, some miscellaneous stuff that'll affect how well you do in battle. So luck is the weird outlier stat.
Yeah.
In this game, and luck is a thing that I've never seen luck in a tabletop game presented this way. You get bonus damage equal to the differential between you and your opponent's luck. So like a high luck build, like not that you can really build for that kind of thing so much in this, like there are certain classes that have different luck growths, but can be really powerful in terms of damage. And then there is also a weather system, which affects characters of different alignments have more efficacy in different weathers.
Yeah.
And characters of different elements have more efficacy.
Additionally, like inclement weather will affect projectiles as well. So like archers end up being way less effective when it's raining, which means that playing this, so the weather moves in a defined cycle as you go, and you have items that will advance or retract which part of the cycle it's going to be in. And if you're in battle for long enough, it will cycle on its own.
Yeah. I know this was neat, and I never engaged with it.
Right.
I never changed the weather, and I never really noticed a big change in my efficacy.
There are a couple of battles where it starts off in heavy rain, and using the weather items like made enough of a difference for my 3 archers to do what they needed to do better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like that was after like getting routed on my first try, going back and starting it again, and then changing my first move to be, altering the weather, and that made the big difference.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine. I just didn't end up having to do it, or.
Why won't you believe me, Gary?
I do believe you. Okay, I just didn't do it. I just played the game differently. The Denim's alignment, seems like it would make like a really big difference with this. It kind of what it basically does is affect an invisible stat called loyalty that your characters have, which changes whether they'll leave. And this is tied into something called chaos frame, which your chaos frame
names
is is the name of how much the different factions like you. Like reputation is a more accurate name for this,
right?
Than chaos frame. Again, just taking a peek into the madness of like people who do the high level stuff of this. The way that you adjust your chaos frame is by having killing units of a certain allegiance, or having units of your own die of a certain allegiance.
Yeah.
So when you're going for a specific chaos frame because you want to recruit all the characters for no reason other than like Suikoden Pokemon reasons.
Yes.
There's no reason to get everybody other than see some extra lines of dialogue. You are manipulating your chaos frame by recruiting enemies that have certain alliances and then killing them.
Mm-hmm.
Which is one of the weirdest things I can think of. Like, so like, you know, I am against Eurasia. I'm going to, you know, get some people from that country, on my team, let them kill people from another country to make Eurasia like me.
Right.
Or kill my Eurasians that I've hired
to
make Eurasia hate me, to make another country like me.
Yes.
You know, it's real wild and complicated.
Yeah. It's about as fiddly as you can get.
It's world tendency.
Yep.
It's like, it's very like world tendency vibes in terms of complication. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, all of this has been about, being inside battle. And kind of the character development that affects those. Some stuff happens outside of battle, you know, primarily cutscenes, in this. I love the cutscenes here. Very good, wonderful, expressive sprite animation. It you know, lives up to kind of this creative team's, you know, other kind of feats as well. And also you're going to be kind of navigating this world map from node to node.
Yes. Anywhere that is not a town can have a random battle. In it, but you can always retreat from these. That's great.
Yep.
So you have to cross the map. This feels borderline mandatory because a lot of the side quests have to do with kind of backtracking to areas you wouldn't intuitively backtrack to.
Yes.
Some of which are hinted at these reports you get in this the Warren report, which you can
such a
read.
Goofy name.
Yeah, it's very goofy.
Yeah.
You can read to kind of get clues about these side quests, but also sometimes you just pop back to an area.
Right. Yeah. So when you go to towns and castles and things like that, you can buy new gear. New gear is added to the towns, to the shops at particular points in the story. So, you know, if you want to buy a really powerful sword, it's not going to open up it's not going to become available until later. Something about buying gear that I really, really miss is the try-on system. I wish that they would have, you know, because the version we played was made after Final Fantasy Tactics, I wish that they would have recognized what a boon that system was for character outfitting and development.
Yeah. The auto, you know, so you have to buy things and just kind of, you know, typically the progressions are linear.
Yeah.
But there are exceptions to that. So there are one-handed and two-handed weapons on the same path. You know, I have a knight, this knight uses axes, you know, and you could reasonably say, I will take a less powerful, you know, not the most recently available two-handed axe because I want a one-handed axe so I can use a shield.
Yes.
Right. That's a choice you could make. You can't really figure that out without the try-on system, or not easily. And worse than that, with magic, items that boost your intelligence will do more to affect your magic damage than anything else.
Right.
So just being able to see, you know, this is how much damage I would do if I was wearing this piece of equipment would just be huge.
Yeah.
You know, it does not exist. And when you auto-equip people, there are different ways you can do it inside your own inventory.
Yeah.
So like I'm auto-equipping them for range, I'm auto-equipping them for healing, etc. It's not a very smart system.
Yeah.
That does that though.
Like what I found myself doing was like when I got to a shop, I would go in, see if new stuff was available. I would then go and look at what each of my guys had, and I would make a shopping list and go in and say, I need this many of this sword, this many of this sword.
And you have to leave town to do that. You have to leave town to go back into the menu for that, which is just absolutely wild. Wild. And minimum 12 characters.
Yes.
So at your most svelte, if you're not recruiting a bunch of extra people, 12, you're doing this for 12 people. We got to talk about crafting.
Oh boy.
My understanding is this was added.
Yes.
For the PSP version. This is wild as hell. So like in crafting games, like typically, you know, I need to create this sword. You know, I need to make a sword +1. So I need the sword and then like a piece of gold and a piece of thread or whatever. The way it works in this game is you don't get a piece of gold. You get a piece of like imperfect, you get like 3 pieces of imperfect ore to make into a piece of perfect ore, to make into an ingot, to then make into a piece of gold.
Right.
Each time you're reducing your numbers. Each time it takes multiple times. Each chance after, I think the second one has a chance of failure.
Yes.
That is wild. Like that is a crazy idea.
Yeah.
I ended up doing this near the end because I got to like, okay, I'm like, okay, I'm at level 20. These are my level 20 weapons. I don't think I'm going to go much further in this because, I think I'm done. So I'm going to make these +1 because the ending is hard and I want to make it good. So I engage with this. I ended up on my third run of this. I did an emulator so I could fast forward through things. This took so long, and you have to also make that shopping list.
Yeah,
like I had to look at my manual of crafting. Say like to make the siege bow +1, it requires a siege bow, blankety bloop. So I'm like, okay, to get 3 steel and 2 leather or whatever, I need this many bad ore, which becomes this many good ore, which becomes this many ingots, which becomes this many, graphites, which becomes this many steel. And then for each path, I do that. Like I made a bunch of physical notes on how to do this, and then still had times where I was like, oh, I had the final step of this has a 55 chance % to work. Like that is wildly bad. That is so annoying as a system, and you're really encouraged to engage with it because you're getting +1 versions of these things.
Yeah.
And if you have a sword and then you have like the next sword level 2, a +1 level of sword level 1 will be better than sword level 2. If that makes sense on the path.
Yeah. Yeah. So like without the chance of failure, this doesn't sound too dissimilar from like the crafting in The Witcher 3 with the chance of failure for each intermediate step as you're getting things set up. It kind of feels like gambling to me. It feels like weird Fire Emblem slot machine kind of stuff.
And it's not like the crafting in Witcher 3 was good.
No,
like this is the worst part of that game. Like that's a wonderful game, and it's like still the dumbest thing about it, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, I didn't make that comparison to say like, oh, Witcher 3 is really good. Just like, oh yeah, like this kind of menu based crafting in a game that is not necessarily about or optimized for that is really tedious, and like I felt like I had to be dealing with it even in the mid game right after I got it again because look earlier when I talked about how rough it was with, the long time to kill, right? Well, a way to get around that is to go in and upgrade a person's sword, to +1, and it made a difference. But like, you end up going and grinding for more imperfect ore because it's out there in the wilderness and you do a battle and you pick it up after that. So again, it goes back to the grinding.
And you can end up buying a lot of that stuff too, like imperfect ore or whatever. You buy the like very base materials. So it's even hard to, kind of calculate what the cost is going to be.
Yeah.
For things because you have to go back and figure out how many times this has to refine down.
Yeah.
So, really just like really unfortunate, really powerful when you get it going. Like you can make this work and make it powerful. Yeah. You can never make it interesting or good.
Right. It's a menu tax. It is one of the most substantial menu taxes I think I've seen. Yeah, it's
Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Menu tax here. We mentioned the Warren report when you're outside of battle. This is like the history lessons or what have you in Final Fantasy Tactics. This gives you up-to-date information on your characters. Every character you meet has a bio. In this, one of the Matsuno said like one of the things he was looking for when making this game, and you can see this undercurrent in all of his games. It's something I really love, is that there aren't bad guys. Like everyone you're fighting has they have their own reasons and they believe in their own mission.
Yeah. I love that you get details about like what they were before the war. Like not everybody is like the psychopathic warlord. They have been drawn in because what they used to do was no longer an option for them, or they were conscripted, or any of this. There's a real amount of dignity to them, to pretty much all the people that you end up fighting.
Yeah, and that's great. Like that is just like it's a really smart move. I respect it.
Yes. The reason we're laughing that that's called the Warren Report is because that's what the report about the assassination of JFK was called.
There's a surprising amount of Easter eggs. Like if you play this game and you get to the bottom of the Necro Dungeon, you actually get to find out who killed JFK.
Yes, it's like the end of The Rock. So
it was an archer. They're extremely powerful.
Right. Yeah. So I love the Warren Report though. Those bios are really good. If you need a refresher on things, like it will show you a big flow chart of all the things you have seen so far. I love the rumors that you see. This is taken out of the bars from where it was in Final Fantasy Tactics. You want to make sure that you go in and look at this. This is like the talk section. And not all of these are tied to side quests. Only a few of them are, but you want to make sure that you read all of them because it will presage things that are that will eventually be happening in the near future for you.
And when you're doing this and engaging with this, you're engaging with the one unassailable victory of this game, which is tone and writing.
Yeah, it's so good.
I'm sure, we'll talk about that later, but it just feels really good to be in these hands because this is it feels unique in games.
Yeah,
nobody else is quite doing this, and I really love it. So, let's talk about recruiting.
Yes, let's do this.
So a pathway through this game, one way that people engage with this game is to try to get everybody, and collect everybody. And as opposed to most people just kind of joining you depending on your path, there is this really complicated set of contingencies, with the base, binary being if the person's still alive.
Mm-hmm.
So early on in chapter 1, there are battles where the battle says defeat this person. You don't want to. You want to kill everyone else and get them down to 10 or 20% of their health.
Mm-hmm.
Then they'll retreat. So they'll show up later, 2 chapters later, for you to do the same thing. And then they'll join you.
Right.
That is how, as far as I tell, how recruitment happens. It's how you get some unique classes.
Yeah.
In this, there are classes you can only recruit. You can never get otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't recruit anybody. Or the other way you can recruit people is somebody will be in trouble. Hey, that person's in trouble. Let's save them.
Yeah.
Because you start a million fucking miles away from the enemy. I was looking online how to do this. The way you're supposed to do it is you get your flying unit, and you take off all his clothes, and you give him the item, the highlight stick that throws healing items at people.
Yep. the lobber.
The lobber, and you just hang out and babysit the person, filling them up with heals every turn.
Right.
Until the rest of your team can get there. It's the degenerate tactics you have to do to save Rafa and Malik on the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's okay, the Elmdor will attack them unless I put a naked character there because the AI will attack somebody who's naked.
Right.
It's that for a sixth of the battles in the game, and nothing happens if you don't recruit them. They just die. But I kept feeling again I was playing this wrong or enjoying it wrong because I'm I tried to recruit this 3 or 4 times just playing it like a normal battle.
Right.
I can't do it. Look up a line and people are oh yeah, it really sucks. You just have to make your Birdman naked and give him a highlight thing. And I'm that fucking sucks. I don't want to do that.
No, he's a good unit.
Dumb as hell.
I need to use him for other stuff.
And it's so gamey. It's so Easter eggy.
Yeah.
And I'm just I just don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So I recruited very few optional characters in this.
Yeah. So that path for recruitment is distinct from the actual recruit skill that you get. You have one of those for different races. So there's ones for humans. There's one for fairy folk, different things like that. You do that with rank and file units, and you want to get them low in health like Pokemon in order to do that. Yeah. What we're talking about here with this recruitment is named characters that have varying relationship to the story. Sometimes a lot in the case of, people who will abandon you based on choices, etc. Sometimes not very much at all. Just a one-off character who may have, an eccentric alteration on an existing, class. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And those alterations tend not to feel very significant. So the one that you read about, the hardest character to recruit in the game, you can get a witch class, but there's also a Wicca class. And the only difference I can tell is that they have a specific skill.
Right.
So there's one skill they have that does seem cool, but if you want that skill, you have to do the separate class, which requires recruiting one of each dragon and then grinding up 30 glass pumpkins and all this shit. And I just miss me with it, man. It is not, I'm not playing this as a completionist. I want efficacy. Yeah. And again, I keep drawing unfavorable comparisons to FFT. But when you got unique classes in that, they had unique verbs, a whole host of unique verbs.
Yeah.
It was really neat. Like, oh, Mustadio is the guy who can disable people from across the map.
Yes.
That's him. That's what he does. Getting him allows me to have this suite of abilities.
Yeah.
Getting any of these sword knights, like Ogrius can do Ogrius shit. Nobody else can do Ogrius shit.
Yeah.
And that is a really cool feeling. And they just gave them to you generally. Yeah. Like there are some of them you could lose, but they made them better at taking care of themselves in that. Like you apparently, Mustadio might be able to die in that mission. I can't quite remember. But if he can take care of himself though, because he doesn't just rush into combat and kill himself.
Right.
Like all these people did.
Yeah. So, what this contributes to is a feeling that like there is playing the game and then there's playing the game. You know, like when you go through, if you're just kind of like playing this at the surface level, oftentimes what you're going to run into is, just like, the game is going to give me enough people. I will have, just by, who is assigned to me in these particular places, a good number of characters with a good spread of classes and abilities that I can rely on, which is good because training up a new class is not really in the cards for you. And you're going to go on and that will feel like enough. There is so much more work that you can go into that feels like the actual playing of the game that a lot of people talk about mostly. And the feeling, it's probably a flavor of like, fear of missing out or whatever, is that if you're not engaging with this on the tedious level, there are advantages that you are not getting that contribute to, any shortcomings you might see. Right.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's a bummer. And again, that feeling that I was not in the right lane of playing.
Yeah.
Was intense and was a patina over my experience there. Yeah. So there are branching paths in the game. I think this is neat. They take you to different versions of chapter 2 and 3, depending on your affinity for law, chaos, or neutrality.
Yeah. The choices that you make in these feel very important,
Yes.
Like it's big stuff. Like we say, the story and tone in this is tops, right?
A+,
yeah. So like the choice that we're going to talk about at the end of this, we're going to get through chapter 1 here. It's a pretty big deal, and calling this law, chaos, or whatever feels a little bit like it's underselling it. It is more about do you hold to pledges and alliances that you have made, or do you hold to like your own internal sense of justice? Is kind of the way that goes.
And this ends up doing a neat thing, to speak to something, positive comparison of this to Final Fantasy Tactics is this, up until the very end where you start getting some supernatural shit, it is almost exclusively this politics.
Yeah.
So it stays grounded. And then, you also rise in scope. Like one of the things that is neat about Final Fantasy Tactics is that you are a side character of history.
Yes.
In it. Like, but one of the things that is also neat about Tactics Ogre is you're not. Like by the end of this, like I was a pretty big deal, mover and shaker. Like I had feelings of like playing as Delita.
Yeah.
For me, at least in the Chaos route, even though like not all the story content in the Chaos route is good, the actual general arc was really empowering and cool.
Yeah.
And I really like it. And it's like story wise, I want to know what happens in the law route. So I'm looking forward to talking to you about it, even though I don't really want to play another, 30 hours of the game.
Right. Yeah. I like what happens in the law route, right? Because, this is a very, kind of like heady political thing that is, it's a story that is based off of, real world history that Matsuno just happens to be really fascinated with. You're dealing with an awful lot of imperfect people who have their own particular flaws in judgment. And like in the law path specifically, like you get to see best laid plans just completely falling apart. The sense of the sense of drama is really high without feeling melodramatic at all, really.
If you look online and people talk about like which routes you should do, they say generally do neutral first or law first and save chaos for last. And I find that really counterintuitive because the way you get onto the law path is through doing a war crime.
Yep.
It's not, these do not correspond to good and evil at all.
Right,
It's orders or not, not taking orders. And the idea that the intended way to play through, is to do a war crime either is like a cultural thing or a 1995 thing.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Like this would not happen now, where the correct choice for the intended playthrough would be to slaughter all the innocent people.
Yeah. Yeah. I took that one primarily because I was like, geez. If I will leave the non-war crime one for Gary. I'll take that bullet because I got here first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you got a more interesting story out of it, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
They don't make you replay the whole game to get the alternate paths.
No, thankfully.
After you beat the game, before the suffix of it, you get something called the World Tarot, and this allows you to jump back to certain decision points with your current characters, your current party. And since any battle scales you, it's not like you're going to stomp them. You can kind of see what might have been.
Right.
This is neat. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
All games should have that.
I like that quite a bit.
Yep.
Yeah, so it takes what could be some really tedious visual novel style, going back over old content. It just makes it part of the system. It knows that you're going to want to see it all if you are into the way this plays. It's a good idea. Yeah. So they initially planned to have alternate chapter 4s for different routes. As it stands, though, they were not able to do that because of memory limitations on the Super Famicom. So what does end up changing is the ending that you get on the other side of this, whereas like what you're doing does not necessarily change that much.
Yeah. This is a follow-up. This is a series. This is a follow-up to Ogre Battle: March of the Black Queen. It plays really differently, though. Yeah. That has even more supernatural elements and is a totally different genre.
Yeah, it's very strange, actually. I remember renting that as a kid because I saw a positive write-up in like a Nintendo Power or something like that. I was not ready for Ogre Battle when I fired it up. I think at that point, like, the only RPGs that I had played were like Super Mario RPG and Final Fantasy 2.
Yeah.
4 or whatever.
The whole series, this is the only game in the series I played to completion. I did play a little bit of one of my favorite video game titles, which is Ogre Battle: Person of Lordly Caliber.
What?
Which is, Person of Lordly Caliber.
What system is that for? What is that?
I don't know. I played it on emulator.
Oh, that's what Ogre Battle 64 was called.
Yeah. Just in the awkward title Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
For video games.
Is that a Queen? Is that a Queen, like a Queen song?
I'd be very surprised.
I was really surprised that Ogre Battle was a Queen song, Gary.
Yeah. It pops up a lot, like when you try to search for things about this. They've got to learn about the Ogre Wars someday.
No, looking on Genius, there is no song called Person, or there's no song or lyric for Person of Lordly Caliber. That is really awkward and bad.
Person, just generally, of Lordly Caliber.
Yeah.
What kind of person? Of Lordly Caliber.
Yep.
So this is Matsuno's second game. And he worked with some of his favorite collaborators, Yoshida on illustration, and the composers Owada and Sakamoto.
Yes.
Who will be familiar to people who also like Matsuno's work. And all of that stuff is on top
point.
caliber.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are collaborators of Lordly Caliber. Like the illustrations look great and the music is awesome.
Yeah. Oh man, just the cutscenes, anytime they're sitting around like a well-appointed table, like either a war table or a banquet kind of thing, just so much love and care goes into that. The color palettes are so good. Yep. The music is really like nice and ethereal when it needs to be and martial when it needs to be. Yeah, just pitch perfect in every single regard. Yeah.
The only thing that made me feel bad about this, or not that it made me feel bad about it, but I ended up about partway through the game putting on podcasts and stuff.
Yeah.
Because my battles were all the same and they took forever.
Right.
And, I just was like, I got to get through this. I like this music, but it's not keeping me engaged well enough.
Right.
For the several turns before my characters are close enough to touch each other. Yeah. So, yeah. Like actually before I edit this, I'm going to have to sit down and listen to this on YouTube to reacquaint myself with it.
To learn what the bangers are. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Matsuno was in charge of the story and kind of the mechanics of things here. Matsuno, anybody who's played his other works knows that he has like particular fascinations, draws things in, from the real world. And he works at a particular scale quite often. So like, this is a big story about the movements of kingdoms and the intrigue that happens both within and between them. This is actually based on the Yugoslav wars, even incorporating like elements of the Bosnian genocide, all of that happening, in the 80s and 90s. All of that horror that we never really learned about here in America, but is actually super important. That is in play here the same way that Final Fantasy Tactics was his like, interpretation of the War of the Roses.
Yeah. The localization of this PSP version is kind of special note here. Alexander O. Smith and Joseph Reeder collaborated with Matsuno to create one of the best localizations. Like these are really good. This is also, they worked on Final Fantasy Tactics, that War of the Lions version, and Final Fantasy 12. There's no persons of lordly caliber here. Everything sounds natural and good. Like it's got that kind of faux Shakespearean historical drama patina over it, but there are absolutely no shortage of really cool turns of phrase.
Yes.
And cool medievally clapbacks and kind of things that people will do.
I love medieval clapbacks. Really, I love the mixture of like high and low speech in this as well.
Yeah.
When you're dealing, like with the peasantry and the royalty and kind of like walking between those worlds as you are acting as a liberator. Just incredibly good, pitch perfect, like the Hall of Fame stuff.
Yeah. I would like a lot more games that have this kind of sense and writing to it. And again, it feels like a Matsuno thing. Like it feels like it's just kind of his bailiwick. You play like Crimson Shroud. This is all over it. Like it's his thing, and it's great.
So this was Matsuno also fascinated with Star Wars. This is especially apparent when you look at something like, say, Final Fantasy 12. But it's present here. This is subtitled Episode 7, with the idea being that, like Star Wars, he wanted to leave more room for other stories in the chronology. He had intentions to make both an episode 6 and an episode 8, so a direct prequel and a direct sequel, but that's not really in the offing, especially after they burned him out and used him up on Final Fantasy 12.
Yeah. Yep. So the Super Nintendo version of this is incredibly impressive. I watched a bunch of that today, and even just in terms of how good it looks, like it doesn't look that different than this, like one of the best looking Super Nintendo games. Just in terms of character, detail and portraits and stuff. It looks great. Yeah. It was ported to the Sega Saturn in Japan, which added voice acting for some cutscenes. In 1997, it came to the PlayStation in America. But this at the time, had come out on the heels of Final Fantasy Tactics. They released that because Final Fantasy Tactics was a hit, but it was not common knowledge necessarily that this was a port of a Super Nintendo game. Right. So that PlayStation version was not as well received because it was more primitive. Look also at, Mario, like how we didn't get Mario 2. What is it, like Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy. Like when Dragon Quest came over, Final Fantasy had already been out and was considered very primitive because in Japan it had come out several years before. Yes. It was more primitive.
Yeah. So it was a victim of that lag and a victim of just release order.
Yes.
Yeah. So Matsuno returned to Square to work on this PSP update. So this was, not taken out of his hands. This came out in 2011. There's kind of a sequel that I'm curious to check out, but I'm also wary. Came out for the Game Boy Advance, Tactics Ogre, Knights of Lotus. The reception on it seems fine, but also there's just a huge streak of, like, around that time, sequels to games that really should have been really good being compromised in some way, like almost senselessly, when they go to a portable. So, see Final Fantasy Tactics A2.
Yeah. I played a little bit of Knights of Lotus.
Yeah.
And it was okay. I didn't when I first moved to Portland, I checked that out, but did not play very much of it.
Yeah.
So Matsuno has not been very much very active as a developer. Mm-hmm. Since then, he did Crimson Shroud, which we've done on the show. Mm-hmm. There's an iOS game called Lost Order, which is about, and I don't know very much about. And then apparently he collaborated on the Final Fantasy Tactics kind of nostalgia scenarios in Final Fantasy 14, mm-hmm. which apparently are really good. But like everything in Final Fantasy 14, they're locked behind 300 hours.
Right.
Of, below average MMO, garbage to get to the good parts of that.
Yeah.
Where everyone's like, oh, this is the best storytelling Final Fantasy is doing. Square is doing your absolute best work. And then telling me you had to put in 300 hours to get to it. And
it's just kind of a game you have to play all the time now. Yeah.
Yeah. That's not your best work.
Yeah.
There is no best work that you had to put 300 hours to get to.
Right.
That makes it bad work. Mm-hmm. You fucked up.
Yep.
So it's not I do not truck with that. You have mm-hmm. to get past the first.
Yeah. If there was an instance version that you played on your own that you could go and just like instantly see that content, fuck, shit, man, I'd buy that.
Sure. Yeah, I would play the Final Fantasy Tactics sequel to that. Right. And there's the other iOS game that is out that is like the Final Fantasy Tactics spiritual successor that mm-hmm. has like, but it's free to play gachapon bullshit. And it keeps like trying to be like, we got Ramza. And I'm like, man, you're not going to get me to play this gachapon free to play iOS game just because you have Ramza. Well, I still have Ramza.
Ramza's on many of my devices right now.
Yeah, you can't like I own Ramza in many ways. Like you do not get to tempt me with Ramza because I got Ramza. I don't need you.
Yes. And like, yes, you have Ramza. I will give you that. It is indisputable. However, like this game, which is War of the Visions, that is pulling from Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. Hey, Gary, what is Final Fantasy Brave Exvius?
Exvius of Brave Caliber. I got no fucking clue what the fuck a Brave Exvius is. Square is so irritating to me right now.
Yeah.
Like, I woke up in a bad mood, but also just like all of this stuff sucks. It's just, all of these like, it's frustrating that they change into something I don't like. And it's frustrating that when they try to like appeal to me mm-hmm. in the things I do like, they just fall on their dick.
Well, I mean, like they do it in a way to try and like force feed you the stuff that you decided to ignore for reasons of taste. Yeah. Okay. So Brave Exvius is like one of how many now? Basically mobile forks of the Final Fantasy name. It's like it's iOS and Android alone itself. So, no.
More of a sliding heroes. Like port Ramza back into Sliding Heroes. You remember Sliding Heroes?
What the fuck is Sliding Heroes, Gary?
A really early Square iOS game.
Oh, like Chaos Ring?
Earlier than that. I have it on my my iPod that I found that has all that old software on it. Mm-hmm. They did a tower defense and they did something called Sliding Heroes, which is using the accelerometer to move little Final Fantasy Tactics from one end of the map to the other and kind of do like a little bit of a hide-glide-esque fighting, like RPG where you just run into each other, but you have to slide them.
Okay.
Just, forgotten Square properties.
Yeah.
All the bravest.
So weird. Yeah, all the bravest. No.
All the bravest is so dumb.
No.
Square does not feel like an ethical or good company to me right now.
Yeah.
I don't, and they threw away the good creators. Like Matsuno, when they had Matsuno, this was the best card you had.
Yes.
This was by far your trump card and was the thing that was going to let you make good games. And you treat them like shit. You put all your eggs in the Nomura basket, and it's a horrible basket.
Mm-hmm.
I would not pick up the Nomura basket if it was carrying baby Jesus and it was going down the river. I would let that Nomura basket just go.
Yeah.
Flanders to God, get off your cloud and kill this fucking basket.
Smite this basket.
Yeah. Smite this basket, please.
Jesus. So there might be some hope. There is a Kickstarter game called Unsung Story that is coming out in late 2020. That is kind of, both being described internally and externally as a potential like spiritual follow-up or successor.
Yeah.
However, who knows? Again, like when they moved it to portable, then it might have been, they might have compromised it. So.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. We'll see if they still have it. So let's get into it.
Yeah. This opens up very differently than the Super Nintendo version, and similar to like an Ultima 4 kind of thing, where you're given it draws 5 random tarot cards from you for you of the major arcana, and then ask how you would handle these situations.
Right.
In the Super Nintendo version, this is asking you what boons you would get from different gods of different elements and stuff. The tarot theming of this is new.
Yeah. And kind of pulled, or it feels like a mirror of the Zodiac theming in
yes.
Yeah. In Final Fantasy Tactics. Yeah.
And what this does, you get these items. So you get one of each of these cards in your starting inventory, and they establish your starting stats. So there are optimal paths for this. I don't think there's a way to intuit that, so I just answered honestly.
Yeah, same. I didn't really care if it gave me a bad start, because, I'm not going to get into the super late stuff where it's going to make that big of a difference.
Yeah. Yep. And then we start off, so we're Denim. We're starting off in this kind of like cabin safe house kind of thing with your sister. And then how'd you pronounce your sister's name?
I say Katua.
Katua, yeah. It's Kachua. In the original version. So I was calling her Kachua. But I don't know if that's actually true.
No, those both sound similar. They're just slightly different Englishes on the on them. Yeah. Kachua, yeah.
Yeah. But with your sister and then your friend Vice with a Y. And he pops in to let you know, hey, like Lancelot is on his way with his army of Dark Knights, and we kind of talk a little bit about who the Dark Knights are.
Right.
They are this pillar of Bakram. Bakram is one of the kingdoms involved here. And the idea is, if we, cut off this, kill this major leader, here, it might create the opportunity for the Galgastani, which are this kind of underclass, conquered people.
Yeah, the Wallister.
Are those. So the Galgastani are the other, so the Wallister are kind of caught in between.
Yeah.
Between the Bakram and the Galgastani.
Yeah. So like the Wallister, they pretty much inhabited this island in Goliath. Here, they were wiped out, like a year ago. Like the Dark Knights had come in and basically killed everybody's family. Denim, Vice, and Kachua, are basically war orphans. And it's the Dark Knights who did this. Also, it's incredibly optimistic to assume that these 3 kids alone could pull this off.
Yeah.
when ultimately we see how the Dark Knights work. Yeah.
Yeah, and Kachua says this as well. Like, it's just like, this is dumb. And basically what Vice says is like, we have to take the chance.
Right.
Because if we don't take this chance, this is once in a lifetime, we have to do it. And this starts us with our chapter 1 kind of title card. If there's blood on my hands, how long will it be until it gets on my heart? Yeah. Which is a great little... great little phrase.
Yeah. And each of the chapters, their different versions have like little different, phrases like that as their call sign. Yeah. And like the first 3 missions or so that we get here, they're basically tutorial. You only control Denim, and everybody else does their own things. They explain, some of the basic systems to you, and they primarily do the fighting. So you can kind of look at what they do and model your own choices on them. Like this battle here in Goliath, here in the town, it's barely even a battle. Like it's a couple of move orders before you actually talk to this Lancelot.
Yeah. And you basically don't do anything.
Right.
In this. And he says, this is a case of mistaken identity. When you get there, this is a different Lancelot. This is not the Lancelot that burned the towns. My name is Lancelot Hamilton. I'm from Zenobia. Zenobia is the area the first game in the series took place in. He is a holy knight, and these group are mercenaries.
Right. Lancelot is even from the first game, from March of the Black Queen.
Yeah, there's a very sad ending in the Chaos Route.
Yeah.
So you kind of go into your little safe house. You tell the mercenaries what's going on. Vice says basically we have to rescue Duke Romway from the Almorica Castle in order to get this resistance movement going. Yeah.
Currently, the Wallister have no leaders. Most of them have been captured after this recent sacking. They were just crushed between Bakram and Galgastan. You know, and they're brutal leaders kind of used as pawns here. But Duke Romway, kind of being the highest of royalty left, will be the figurehead that we need. And basically not much else. Duke Romway ends up fucking everything up no matter what you do.
Yeah. Big villain in the chaos route.
Oh yeah. Big,
but
a big liability in the law route, let's say.
And we're kind of setting up this dynamic.
Right.
We have, your sister is, Quechua, is the only person you have in your family. And then Vice is, like a hothead.
Yeah.
And, the idea here is they're kind of setting up this like battle for Denham's soul, whether he's going to be merciful and even-headed or whether he's going to be, a little hothead.
Yeah.
I know it is different in the law route. What happens to Vice in the chaos route is hilarious. And it is, I'm going to dine on it when we get there.
Yeah.
in a couple hours. It's real good.
I think I write a little bit about what happens, in the law route. It ends up being a little bit more dignified, let's say.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also like, it's, Vice is making the case for what you need to do for the Wallister people as a whole. And Quechua is very much about, we need to stick together, will you fight for family more so than kingdom, right?
And against war, like basically we're trying to end bloodshed, not create it.
Yes.
The mercenaries, for Zenobia offer their services.
Right.
And it says you can take them up on it or turn them down. Mm-hmm. And I took them up on it each time because I just wanted them to join me, and they're the ones who tutorialize the next battle.
Yes.
I wonder if this is a way of saying you don't need a tutorial.
Oh.
If you're doing a replay.
Yeah.
So because when you say you need them, Quechua does not like this, but you go to the gates of Almorica and you have to vanquish this leader of these forces, Bapal. And while this is happening, all these knights turn towards you, tell you a little pro tip, and then go do their action.
Right. This introduces, Almorica Castle as a dungeon introduces something that is kind of cool about this, which is larger locations that contain multiple battles. Like when you start, you are going to be moving from location to location, without being able to go back. Later on, this broadens out and you're making choices of okay, do I want to attack the north wall or the south wall? And this has, meaningful impact on the way it goes. But here you're going from the gates of Almorica into the passageway.
Yeah. And it did learn a lesson from Final Fantasy Tactics where it says, hey, keep multiple saves.
Yes.
When this happens. It's explicitly telling you don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you get inside, you get to the Almorica, so after you do this, it comes out that, this was a trap. Right. They announced that the Duke was going to be executed to try to lure the rebels out. And we get into the Almorica passageway where we have another leader to kill Agaras. Yeah. And one of the ways that I'm going to be a failure as a podcaster and a fan of Matsuno, personally failing him in this, is a lot of the times in these battles, there's just a guy. It's like the objective here is to kill Blobbity-Bloop, and I don't know who that is. I never recruited them. I'm sure they have I maybe read their paragraph in the Warren report.
Yeah.
But I kept getting the sense that these characters were important in a way that I did not understand.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Again, we're firmly in tutorial. I've got no idea when you can really only control Denham, how it would be possible to spare Agaras here.
Yeah.
No
idea.
Maybe if you forwent the help and skip the tutorial, this would just be a more straightforward battle. I've got no idea how Agaras would perform differently, than everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. This basically plays itself. Again, the first two run-ups of this I did on hardware were obnoxious. Made me very happy to have the fast forward.
Yeah.
For when enemies were just moving. Not that there's no value in that. You can see what they do, but it takes a while. These animations.
Yeah.
Afterwards, we have rescued the Duke. We're at this kind of set piece that we're going to keep seeing, this table, this war room kind of table. And Ronway is skeptical, of Lancelot. He's a foreigner. He's there, and he's like, basically you're just here like the Dark Knights are.
Yeah.
To ruin everything. And he says, no, I'm actually here just looking for work. This isn't true. Yeah. We're going to find out what this group is really here for. But at this point, they pass their bluff check or whatever.
Yeah. Romway basically believes, this is Zenobia, seeing the disorder here and sending an advance party to size this up so they can gobble up whatever fish are still squabbling, by the time they reach here. Yeah. Yep. Regardless though, Lancelot says, we're not here to brutalize everybody. They join the mercenary crew as knights. You do not necessarily get Lancelot, but you get a couple of knights who are with them. And then eventually, their Birdman, guy, Canopus, will just join you as a regular unit, that you can use. And he is like he is the early game crutch.
Yeah. And late game crutch.
Yeah.
Canopus was my MVP for the whole game.
Yeah. Canopus is great.
And Romway is interesting. He talks about how you're the heroes of Almorica. You're the heroes of Goliath. Mm-hmm. And he basically says like this will be a PR thing.
Yeah.
For you, like these young people went and fought back. Like we're going to use this. Mm-hmm. He gives you a job. Says like go to this town of Crisaro and capture the necromancer Nibeth.
Right.
And Nibeth, like there's a whole necromancy subplot of this game that keeps coming up, and it gets weirder and weirder when it comes up. Like when I'm in chapter 3 and 4, and it's like, oh, the necromancer's here.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm like, well, fuck. Okay, all right. But mainly they'd sent a knight, Sir Leonar, there, and Sir Leonar has not reported back.
Yeah.
So we're off to go see what's up.
Mm-hmm. And Sir Leonar's squeeze comes up and like basically tries to fill you out. Oh gosh, I forget her name that we see here. She's the one who abandons me later on. They don't need to fight. Lady Ravnus. There we go.
Yeah.
Right.
Ravnus is apparently, according to the fans, an Agrius kind of XP.
Yeah. Or Agrius is a Lady Ravnus XP.
Well, she was added to this version.
She was? Okay, cool.
Yeah, right. Ravnus was not originally in the game. And then the other thing that's really interesting, I love the dialogue here. Mm-hmm. When I'm gonna point out good turns of phrase and I remember them.
Yeah.
Because Vice is like, well, we saved your butts, like we saved the Duke. Mm-hmm. And she implies like the only reason why you're able to do that is because we were drawing off the forces.
Yes.
This whole thing has the feeling of this PR coup.
Yeah.
The whole time. And he complains about this because Vice is a little twerp, mm-hmm. and she basically says like if you don't like it, give truth to it. Like if you don't like it, give truth to the lie. Mm-hmm. If you don't like you have a false reputation, build a real one.
Yeah.
And again, it's like that good Matsuno semi Shakespearean turn of phrase shit.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
And even just like the idea that we're working on the level of intrigue that, that Romway is, sorry that this word is fraught, but it's the only way I can think of, that he is grooming you to be like this poster child, this, emblem of hope to like gather everybody around. His frankly very shitty decision making, is very good. And once you realize that's what's happening, the things you end up doing make a lot more sense. Like, okay, like how in the world is it actually like worthwhile that I did this thing?
Yeah.
Because you're dealing with a populace that is not entirely convinced that an uprising is possible, right?
Yes. Or in fact are entirely unconvinced, basically.
Yeah.
As we'll find out.
And that plays into something that is pretty much entirely, I don't know if there is a statistical ramification for this, but particular acts or particular decisions that you make will change your title that people will know you by. And this is always visible in the upper right. When you're on the world map, and you can actually go into the Warren report and see the history of all the titles that you've gotten and see why you got that. It does a really good job to again, get the scale of this, that you are, being spoken of for your acts, feats and deeds. Yeah.
It's very Fallout.
Yeah.
Not even like in Fallout 3, obviously you got to be different things of the wasteland and Three Dog would yell them at you. But in like Fallout 2, you'd have different reputations based on certain areas.
Right.
That based on what you had done. And that's what this reminded me of quite a bit. So we go to Tangmouth Hill, which is going to be our grinding zone for a while. Yeah. There's a wizard here, Orba, who is, these are remnants of Galgastani forces that are just in the wild.
Yeah.
Here. And we get joined by Canopus. He is one of the knights. He just decides to join. I kept expecting there to be some intrigue about this, but like he hangs out and teases me and is a good friend basically the whole time. There's like, there's no intrigue. He is a birdman. His starting class is kind of a fighter mage, but I feel like you're a sucker if you don't switch him into an archer, because that is his strength, and he will absolutely decimate everything.
Yes.
Because mobility is really huge for archers. This feels like a weird overcorrection from Final Fantasy Tactics in terms of how powerful they made archers. Like a legit strategy for the final boss of the game is to switch everyone to archer. And then it basically makes it really easy, apparently. Archers are incredible, and I had 2 to 3 of them on my team at all times.
Yes. Same.
And thus, so.
Yeah. Make Canopus your archer right away, or at least one of them. And when we say he's a birdman, but basically like no height, he ignores height depending on where he moves.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit like making somebody into a lancer or a ninja in Final Fantasy Tactics. Like he'll just immediately like get to the top of a wall and start taking people out from the parapet and stuff like that.
He can fly over enemy units as well.
Yeah.
So nothing stops him. There's a whole lot of bits about like how you can jump over gaps that are one thing long as the next area is lower. Yeah. He ignores all that shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Him and Vice fight during this. Again, Vice is, a little obnoxious twerp.
Yeah.
It's just like, this is a Wallister fight. And it's like, were you not just here when our leader just said, these guys work for us now?
Yeah.
Fucking idiot. They throw rocks at each other, and Kashua does not care for this.
Yeah.
And this is the introduction of the chariot tarot, which allows us to do the rewind turns.
Don't worry, I always say chariot too.
Yeah, chariot. Chariot.
In Southland Tales.
Yeah. Will's going to get more than one person to watch Southland Tales, and it sucks. Who's not good, and it's not fun bad. It is weird.
Okay.
The movie sucks.
That's enough. Something being weird is good enough, right?
For some. But anyway, so this is like a really basic battle.
Yeah. You have a really wide open battlefield. Your balanced set of enemies. No beasts or anything. Mostly classes that you have seen before. You start at opposite ends. Go fight, and that's kind of what makes this. That's what makes this into a
Green Hill,
Green Hill kind of thing.
Yeah. The next mission is in Chrysaro. We're introduced to our character whose name is escaping right this second. This priest. Who we have here. Yeah. And it's real weird. In a cutscene, he's demonstrating a difference in the systems. Because in the original version, exercise just killed undead units. Here, and if you did it while they were in the recovery period, it wouldn't work. And now it's the opposite.
Right.
Now you have to bring them back, or you have to bring them down and then exercise them, or they'll keep coming back after a 3 count.
Yeah. This is Donalto, is the name. Adina Donalto. This is also demonstrating the fact that he is a priest. So the healing class and the exorcism and damage to undead class used to be separate from each other. Like your regular cleric could not learn exorcism or use it naturally.
Yes.
Here, this is also showing that separation is no longer the case.
Yeah, and to specify, he is the version that can not do direct damage.
Right.
He is the buff and healing unit and exorcism unit. The other unit can shoot magic missiles.
Right.
And also for some reason haste. The haste buff is considered part of that subset. And these are all like when we were talking about the magic system earlier. This is actually pretty frustrating to me because an enemy, you can look at a class and see that they can use light magic.
Right. But they can use everything in light magic.
All light. Yeah. Like these are all light magic. Haste and exorcism and, magic missile, whatever the equivalent of that is, are all light magic. And certain classes can use certain ones. So it just ties into that. It being really, really hard to tell what a class is like just by looking at them.
Right.
In this.
But yeah, our target here is Moldova, who they call a necroprentice.
Yep.
They're waiting for Nibeth's return. He has fled, and they're going to come back here. We're in this town, which gives us a little bit more variability in the height than we've had before. We have rooftops, we have waterways, And we're also dealing with these undead, both skeletons and ghosts, phantoms here. And the fact that they'll raise up after 3 turns if we don't deal with them means that if you are making a drive right for, the important enemies at the far side, they will wake up and then come back and attack you from the rear.
Yeah. The way I ended up doing this was kind of splitting my party.
Yeah.
Like sending an advanced party and then keeping some people in the back to do support.
To clean up.
And fight, do clean up and fight skeletons when they woke up.
Yeah.
Undead are a huge pain in the ass.
Yep.
In this game, having to, if you have one character who knows exorcism, at this point it's just Donaldo and he does not use it. On enemies. The AI isn't smart enough for it.
Right.
So basically I just had to keep putting the skeletons down. Eventually I would buy a lot of scrolls of exorcism, even though that got expensive, but it was just worth it because if undead were about, I needed everybody to be able to put them down permanently.
This is also, so undead are also, irritating because generally of the magic schools, darkness ends up being your good all-rounder, has good damage, has, access to very good status effects and things like that. However, darkness, has a big disadvantage against undead. Sensically, right? That stands to reason, but you end up fighting undead, and if you have specialized around darkness magic at all, then you're kind of done.
Yeah, it makes it hard to hurt them. The elemental system in this game is really interesting. Yeah. Because that is the only cross elemental weakness thing. Yeah. It is not like earth is weak against air or fire is weak against water. It's just light and dark, and everything else is basically fine. And gets along together. It's a little bit underbaked. Yeah. So afterwards, Leonis thanks us for saving him. The priest says that necromancer is still out there. And then we join forces. Yeah. He joins us. And it opens up this optional or not Leonis, Leonar rather. Yeah. It opens up this optional mission where we can go and go fight Nibeth. Yeah. This is difficult here. Yes. And you can go do so, and this has consequences for recruiting some of his daughters. Right. Later is my understanding, but otherwise you just do it to do it.
You can do this pretty much any time in chapter 1 before you get into the series of battles that end this out of Balmamusa. I found that when I went to go here right now, I was not ready. I needed to get to get my party a little bit more up to speed. Cause when you unlock new weapons, that jumps you ahead of the curve a little bit on the leveling.
And more skill slots. Yes. Like early on, it's very meaningful to get an extra skill slot and be able to equip like strength or dodge or whatever. Yeah. I just ended up grinding for a little bit and then fighting him. Yeah.
It's a good mission. I like this quite a bit because you start out, outside this ruined fortress, which effectively is like fighting up a very, very steep hill. Yeah. And by the time I came and did this, I was a little bit more capable of doing, exorcisms. You're controlling, Donaldo right now. So you have him there. I have my other cleric. So it eventually ended up being pretty good. He teleports away, when he, gets in low enough health.
Yeah. Cause it's going to be a weird subplot. Yeah. Going here right away, this is very difficult. This ended up being the first mission I just Canopus alpha striked it. Send Canopus up the side where he was invincible, wait for him to get his finishing move because he's the first character to get one, and then just use that on the necromancer. So we head back in the plot. We go back to Almorca Castle where we talk to the Duke. He gives us our next mission. It says, "Hey, visit Phi-Doc Castle. This is currently held by the Bakram, and make a non-interference treaty with the Dark Knights." So go meet with them. These are the people who killed your parents. Yeah. Go meet with them. Yeah. You seem like the best people for this job, and just tell them, hey, don't mess with us.
Right. And this is pretty bad, not just because of who is being sent to do this, but literally anything that causes the Dark Knights to take a side will cause, lots of ramifications, with the Galgastani, right?
Yeah. And the Dark Knights are no good. No. It's not like ironic. It's not like an ironic name or something.
Right. Yeah. The Shady Beagles really do suck.
Yeah, they really do suck. Quechua and Vice do not want to do this. And the Duke basically says, like, hey, it's only temporary. This is out of convenience and stuff. And this is the first kind of hint that the Duke is basically, ends justify the means.
Yeah.
As a dude. Like, he is more shrewd and political. He is not the underdog that you want him to be.
No.
He's willing to throw people into the grinder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you end up getting stopped on the Golborza plain. I kind of this is the first time I'm saying some of these out loud.
Golborza. Quadriga.
Phydoc.
Archaeopolis.
Zeode. But the Golborza plain, it's pretty wide open. I ended up doing a lot of grinding here, actually, because you end up fighting a lot of beasts, and those ended up being pretty easy for me to fight. There's really no story here. You just have these Galgostani warriors in 3 small groups in each of the corners, and there's a river in the middle. Water is tricky, because not everybody can stand in it or walk across it. So you end up having to find shallows, and crossings there. And there are special abilities that specifically rune fencers get, weirdly enough, to be able to, cross those.
It ends up being, I think, fairly obnoxious, those abilities, because again, when I talk about how I want this stuff to be class based, because, you have a maximum of 10 skills you can equip, and when just your basic verbs all take a slot.
Yeah.
And there are tons of things that feel like they should be benefits, but to stay above the curve end up being mandatory.
Yeah.
Like you can't not have True Strike.
Yes.
Equipped. Like, I'm not going to miss 20 to 25% of my shots.
No.
Just kind of period. So switching out to ideally you'd want to be like, there's water here. I'm going to switch several of my units to have the wading skill so they can move across water.
Yeah.
In practice, this was not only too fiddly, when I was talking about doing things suboptimally to avoid fiddle, but also it was, it would make those units so appreciably worse as to be questionably valuable.
Yeah. There's also an element of trial and error to this. You don't know really when you're going to go into a map that has, that has water prominently in it.
Yeah.
So you can go in with your regular loadout, find out, oh yeah, this is totally it's going to screw me if I don't have at least one person who's able to navigate this. That's weirdly the case for a lot of different things. I'll talk about this when we get there, but eventually we're going to start finding Beastmasters, and Dragoons who we're going to end up fighting with. And those are characters who are specifically made to take out beasts. Well, you don't know if you're going to go up against a beast until you get into a fight and see what the loadout is. Oftentimes the answer is no. And so you end up, if you're bringing them in as a matter of course, you have a unit who is not at all spec'd to deal with what you end up needing to fight against.
Humans.
So it really discourages actually building up and using those because they are so specialized. And it requires foresight or reloading to actually know what you need to do.
Using a guide. And the fact that beasts are everything, you have a petrify, charm, sleep key and a hammer, and everything is a nail.
Yeah.
With that, I was looking at all these maneuvers and skills and classes that were related to taming and defeating beasts and empowering them when you're on my team. And I'm like, I'm just going to put them to stone, and then at the end of the battle have everyone hit them until they die.
Yeah.
It's why it feels like there's entire systems of this that are kind of cool, expressive play on one end, but end up being unnecessary and not very fun to engage with on the other.
Yeah. Or, so specialized for endgame, or so specialized, I know, taming beasts, you can take them and sell them, at auction.
Yeah.
And that's a really good way to get a lot of money early on. And money does end up being kind of in pretty short supply here. But using a character for that is a really big commitment of your resources.
One little touch, I just want to point this out because I read about this. I didn't actually do it, but keeping some of the black humor from Final Fantasy Tactics and Matsuno involved. When you sell a beast they say they beg not to be sold. Similar to when you dismiss them
right.
in Final Fantasy Tactics. And one of their barks is please don't eat me. And then they turn into a steak. No. Like you get an item, you can buy an item called a steak, which increases your stats. Like, so depending on the item, you immediately just eat your buddy.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. Well, and also like what qualifies as a beast doesn't necessarily have to do with its sentience.
Yeah, there's like lizard men and shit too.
Right.
Yeah. So
it's brutal.
Yeah.
Unethical at the very least.
So you do this battle. We get to the Archaeopolis of Rhyme, and we walk in, and there is a woman, Sistina, who is being harassed by these Galgasani soldiers. Mm-hmm. And we get a choice, like, this fight isn't our fight, or we have to save her.
Yeah.
And that's classic Final Fantasy Tactics shit.
Mm-hmm.
Except this is where you have to turn Canopus into a potion highlight player.
Yeah, you have to turn Canopus into a naked drug thrower.
Yes. Yeah. Otherwise, Sistina, you can even, a lot of these fights where you're supposed to recruit the person, you even say, like Denim comes up and says, hey, we're here to help you. Mm-hmm. Like, come to us if you can. And they're like, no, I don't trust you. And I'm like, well, fine, die.
Yeah.
Die then. Like, I am not going to like go restart this battle, which I had no idea there'd be a recruitment thing here. Take my most powerful unit and change them into the specialized babysitter for the chance of recruiting you later when your class is going to be, basically a knight, but can use fire magic instead of air magic, light magic. Or
right.
It's just so irritating as a design philosophy. Mm-hmm. Of these things. So I did not say, I tried like 4 times.
I tried.
And then there's it just stopped. Like, he's like, you keep walking into danger, you idiot. You're going to die.
Yeah. And it felt like when I succeeded at this, it was entirely by luck. Like they just, like I eventually got enough of my guys closer that the enemy AI prioritized coming after us instead of taking pot shots at her.
Yeah. That's another way you can do this other than making a drug slingshot is to send a naked priest forward. Because the enemy, their AI routine is they focus for mages and healers, and then they focus for low HP.
I just like the idea of dressing Bugs Bunny up sexy and sending him up to lure over a bunch of Elmer Fuds
as a sexy priest. Sexy priest Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
What sins you commit, Doc?
You ready to add a few more? Yeah. No.
Doc. Hey, Doc.
Before we talk about the battle, I just want to talk about one other frustrating thing about this. I rescued Sistina, and then afterwards, it comes out like, okay, she's part of the Wallister Liberation Front, which is different and separate from you. They are kind of unaffiliated. They do not like that the royalty has any role in this at all. And like she asks you a question like, what are you, why are you fighting? And you can either say like, oh, I fight for the Wallister or I fight for my family or whatever. If you answer that wrong, she goes away. She will not join you. I said I fight for the Wallister, and she's like, oh, so you're no different than any of them. Laters. And I was like, oh, I thought that was the right answer, but it wasn't.
Nope. Yeah. So they in an ideal world, you would have a guide or you just restart the battle and do the whole thing again, roll the dice and see if you can get the natural 20 that allows her not to die.
Right.
In that, but to me, that is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You get to Phydock Castle.
We can talk about the battle a little bit there.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, as Skip just said. Yeah.
It's very similar. To normal battles. She starts really far away from you, kind of to the left, and you have this bottleneck in front of you with houses. So other than Canopus, you have to send everybody through this narrow passage. So even getting people close enough to heal her or distract the enemy is a little bit tricky. Because again, you're fielding, 9 units at this point, I think, and people can move 3 or 4 units. So it's really hard to make a lot of distance in a turn.
And something when you have a bottleneck like this, you do not want to run into a Three Stooges problem. Like the first person who gets initiative oftentimes will be a priest or somebody else with a really low move. You do not want to send that person into the bottleneck first because they will block the progress of other people who come up later who have more mobility.
Yeah. There's also, we talked about how this is kind of obviated by the Birdman characters. You get this one Birdman. To get more, you have to recruit them. You have to engage with that recruitment system and not the story recruitment system, the skill-based recruitment system, which I understood it was like a Pokemon. I had to get somebody low health. I never saw in the whole game a percentage higher than 0.
You have to be right next to them.
I tried.
Oh, well.
Like I'd be really close to them and kept having 0, and maybe I didn't have both the factors at the same time. Being right next to them and having them at like the low enough health threshold. But the way the skill works, you can do it on the entire field, but it only works if they're adjacent.
It's very strange.
That's really weird.
I don't understand that decision. No.
Because I would have liked more birdmen. Like all of my archers could have been birdmen, and that's a really good class combo.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Another thing that's important to talk about here is like trajectory too. We didn't really talk about that. We talked about it in spells, how there are projectile spells and like instant effect spells. Trajectory is really, really important for both, crossbows, bows and spells because they all behave a little bit differently. An enemy can be within range. You can actually like get over them and, target them. But if there's anything that reasonably would block the shot, it will. Yeah.
It doesn't show up in the percentage to hit, which is obnoxious to me.
Right.
Like I have 0% chance to hit that.
And also you need a skill to see the trajectory to see if it's going to be interrupted by something.
Yep. And we talked about how that's a precious resource.
Yeah.
There's also in just weird quirks to the archery system is that your range is not accurate.
That's so weird.
You can go outside your range. You have a minimum range. You can't go within.
Right.
But like typically you can go at least 2 squares past your maximum range and more if you have a height advantage.
Yeah.
That's really strange. That's a really weird choice.
Yeah. And that leads to archers being even more overpowered than they otherwise would be. Yeah.
Yeah. Dominant. So then you make your way to Phi Castle for this mission. The Dark Knights are all hilariously evil looking.
Even the name, the Dark Knight Belzephin.
Yeah, Belzephian, here is the kind of the leader. He takes you in and we meet the Dark Knight Lancelot with his eye patch.
Yeah.
Here that our Lancelot, this is the guy we thought we were going to ambush in the beginning of the game.
He agrees to this neutrality pact, that we bring here, but then the topic of Goliath comes up. And he apologizes. He apologizes to Quechua, for what the Dark Knights did, basically saying, how war is.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. And this is Cold Comfort, of course. And is bullshit based on what the Dark Knights end up doing.
Right.
So we head back, go to the castle. The Duke sends us on another mission, this time to Balma Musa. Balma. Yeah, there we go. Balma Musa. Baba Booey. They send us to Sabaro. Where the Walster are used as like slave labor.
Yeah.
Anything. And basically it's like, we don't have enough forces to overtake them, but we can incite a revolt.
What Balma Musa is coded as, it changes depending on the translation. It goes from either like a labor camp to basically like a concentration camp. It's pretty rough.
Yeah. When you're there, it just looks like a town.
Yes.
And Leonard had been with us before this. He takes off, and now Dame Ravnus comes with us.
Yes.
She is the one who we talked to before, who was like, give truth to the lie, solid. And before we leave, we're on our way out. Lancelot tracks down Denham, and they have a little discussion about like fear of battle. Basically, again, really good, Matsuno writing. Like. If the sword's not shaking, like you're not paying attention or something like that. I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it's good. Some of you have never shaken a sword and it shows. Yeah, exactly. Your silence and the subject of shield is deafening. That's it. That's the tweet. It's weirdly prescient. Yep. And then we get a little bit of like very ham-handed backstory right before we leave, where he shows you his dead wife's music box, which I'm sure was from the first game. And talks about how the melody bolsters him and such. A little bit of a preview of what he ends up kind of being here for. So we head out. We have a couple more wilderness battles here that end up having very little to talk about. So we go by Lake Bordeaux. This is a large battle in some wetlands. And here is where I started fighting enemy berserkers. Yes. Weirdly, berserkers cannot go berserk at low levels. Like that's a skill that they need to level into. A way late skill. And berserk means cleave. Yes. In D&D terms. Berserk means not cleave. It means like hitting enemies, like a wider attack. Right. So.
Yeah.
A lot of the skills, like you activate them and they only affect the next attack that you do, which makes them kind of a shitty investment. You wait quite a while to get 40 TP or whatever, and then you get one berserk. So you spend all this time, you put this point in the skill, you put the resource into it, and then you wait for 40 TP to do one attack that will possibly hit 2 enemies.
Yes.
And then you start over with that wait.
Yeah. And in practical terms, like a berserker, so you have a warrior who's a well-rounded fighter, uses a lot of weapons. You have a knight who is like defensive oriented. Berserkers are offensive oriented.
Yes. And rune fencers are fighter mages with support magic, who are only really good because they're the first people you can get who can cast haste.
Yes.
For a while.
Rune fencers also come out of the gate being able to use spears really well. So
yeah. Yep, the spears have reach. Answer a little bit to that. I ended up leveling up a berserker. Berserkers have a late game skill, which gives them a 50% strength bonus before they attack.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
It was like one of the few things that could hurt the unboss that wasn't a finisher. That is really worthwhile until that comes up, though, which is the end of the main game. They underperformed from knights.
Yeah.
For me, which have a lot of defensive skills, but just are tankier, wear better armor.
Yeah.
Have more,
like that Rampart aura and the Shadow Rampart aura ended up being really important on the knights. Yeah.
Which is a cool, what that does is it makes you stop enemies. They have to stop when they land next to you. And you can extend that aura to even further so you can block choke points. Which is really cool. There's like a lot of moves like that kind of don't go quite far enough and the maps don't work for. So for example, rune fencers as well can make barricades.
Yeah.
They get a TP skill that allows you to make, just a 1x1 block that you have to destroy before you can move past. That's incredibly cool as an idea.
Yeah.
I did not find, and I tried to find use for this because that's my shit.
Yeah.
Could not find one map where the enemy couldn't just circumvent it.
Yeah.
Or that I could get enough TP early enough to do that before the enemy had gotten past where I would do it.
Right.
Yeah.
So cool idea, very limited possibility for execution.
Yep.
Yeah.
The next level that you go to is the Ziad Moors. This is another wetland to make our way to the Balamusa. And we meet a recurring character, Beastmaster Gamp, who at this point has some humans with him, but he also summons in 2 griffins.
His 2 beloved pets.
Yep. If you take out one of them or Beastmaster Gnap, he flees.
Yeah. These griffins are emergencies.
Yeah, we should talk about animals. We should talk about beasts and stuff in this at some point. Because it's going to become more of a thing in the later chapters.
Yeah.
They're interesting. They're slow, generally. But they do a lot of damage, and they're so fucking tanky.
Extremely tanky. Not just in HP total, which is, yes, high, but also in like just basic damage resistance. And this even goes down to like really minor beasts. Like when you end up fighting like lizard men, their whole thing is that, they have scales and they're also wearing armor, and like melee attacks do nothing. Yeah.
So a lot of times for beasts, you have to, if you're trying to kill them, if that's your goal, doing magic, is how you would do that. Again, though, like the Omni key is Sleep, Petrify, Charm.
Yeah.
Beast ended up being my number one, like, charm these guys right away.
Yeah.
And they moved so slow that like very rarely would they do damage for me. But they just wouldn't attack me.
Yeah.
Even if it just gave them one turn where they didn't attack me, that was worth it.
Yeah. You end up fighting like griffins and stuff. A lot of them have access to their own status effects, their own afflictions that they can do. This is going to be the primary source of poison that you're going to run into in the game. At least it was for me. And poison is, devastating in this.
It's way worse in the Super Nintendo version. In this version, you tend to the way poison works is really interesting. It's on the turn of the poisoner, not on your turn. So if, the griffin poisons you, every time the griffin would get a turn, you take like 10 poison damage. In the Super Nintendo version, it was 30 damage.
Good God.
Earlier when I talked about the pacing imbalance in terms of inflicting status and recovering from status, the enemy will start poisoning 4 or 5 of your guys at once.
Yeah.
If that was doing 30 damage per turn and that was just a 4, turn tax, like time tax, that would have been just absolutely bug nuts.
This is the first battle where it really hammered home for me that to end the battle, all you needed to do was actually meet the objective. Before this, I was really spending a lot of time kind of diligently clearing all of the maps. In this one, it was like by the skin of my teeth. I was like, okay, like I'm just going, I know I'm going to fail at this. I'm not going to be able to defeat all these griffins and all these dudes. So I'm just going to see how this shakes out. It just happened to be that I focused fire and damaged one of the griffins enough to stop the battle.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Same. And that does leave him alone, which I think you can recruit him later.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. So, fine fight, but taught me a lesson that you don't have to fight everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So we arrive at Balamusa. And we're just kind of outside the town for this first part, this fort. We clear out some people.
Right.
Just humans like berserkers, knights, mages. Not too big a deal.
Yeah. It's easy. It's just relatively low effort because you stop out at the top of the hill. And you end up fighting your way down. You have Lady Ravnus with you. She has, she's really powerful. She's acting as a guest in this, and she tends to, be useful because, if there's one thing the guest AI knows how to do, it's attack. So,
yeah.
But this is where we get to the choice. Welcome to Warcrime Town.
Yeah. And we get here. This is interesting. Like you go in, you're like, hey, stand up for yourselves, and they're all old. Like they're like, we can't do this. Yeah. It's like the opposite. This situation ends up becoming something that happens like 7 times in Game of Thrones.
Right.
Where Danny walks up and is just like, hey, have you tried not being a slave? And they say, oh, shit. Whoa. And then they do it. And it's really offensive and horrible.
Yeah.
And here it plays out more like it might actually play out, which is like,
do you think we haven't tried fighting back? Do you think we haven't seen what happens when people fight back?
Totally. Like we have no choice. We're not willing to sacrifice half of ourselves for this, and Vice, again, a little twerp, calls them all cattle. Like he's not having it. Leonard pulls you outside and says like, listen, and there's foreshadowing about this. The Lord had been like, hey, if plan A doesn't happen, do sinister plan B. And Leonard nods and he comes back. He says, listen, we had to kill them all. We get a flashback to Ronway and he's saying, hey, the captives, they're not going to rise up. If we kill them dressed as the Galgastani, this will incite the countryside against the Galgastan.
Right. It will galvanize anybody who might have thought that resistance was not good. If we arrange a slaughter, they are more useful to us as martyrs. This will be the event that not only rallies the remnants of the Wallister who are spreading about, but Romway's guess about the way this is going to turn out is that it will also demoralize Galgastan. That Galgastan will think, oh my God, like, is this really the kind of war that we're fighting? Romway believes that people are going to stand down. Yes.
Yeah. And Leonard is not a bad dude. Even in the Chaos route where I, defy this. Like this is probably like just killing these people was probably a little bit too big of a moral event horizon for what they were going for.
Yeah.
As we mentioned in the beginning, like I can't imagine, if this is the idea that they wanted you to do, it's a pretty tall order. And part of that's 2020 brain. Like in 1995, 25 years ago, is probably definitely more of a like, yeah, fuck it, kill them all, rip and tear. Not as, but as for the tone they're going for, it's very counterintuitive. To me to do so.
Yeah.
But this is the fulcrum on which it passes. And from everything I hear, I totally recommend if you're going to play this game, do the Warcrime. Because the Chaos route is pretty boring in terms of plot. Like there's some really good stuff in it, but there are a lot of just mercenaries hunting you down. Like it is the Outlaw route. And the Outlaw route means getting stopped by guys hunting your head who shout their name at you like an anime, and then you kill them, and then you go to the next map.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot during Chapter 2 in the Chaos route.
Yeah. And in the Law route, you end up, being ordered around by Romway before you eventually supplant him. So you're working on the inside as it goes. Kill the civilians, puts you on Law. Refuse to kill the civilians, puts you on Chaos. I figured, okay, I'll jump on the grenade here and take the Warcrime because I figured that would put me on Chaos. Counterintuitive, like you said.
Yeah. Yep. So in Chaos mode, Leonard says, well, that's unfortunate. Vice, join me and take them out. And Vice's portrait changes to turn him into like imagine like Nintendo Power Nestor, but evil. He just becomes this like sniveling like war freak.
Okay.
Like it's such a weird turnaround because he's just like, yeah, kill them all. You've always been weak. Fuck you. Like, it's like, what the hell, man? Like, where did this come from?
Huh.
Everyone's begging him to like not be a shithead, and he just immediately became a monster. Ravnus comes out and tries to stop this, but she gets killed by Vice, so you don't even get to really talk to her.
Yeah.
And then you do a fight.
Yeah.
Here, Vice leaves a bunch of people to mop you up.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Did you find that the Chaos version of this fight was harder than Balma Musa Part 1? Like, did it leave you at more of a disadvantage here, or?
No, this was pretty fine.
Oh, well.
This was not particularly tricky or anything. They just sent in some people, but they were far, like, when you first did Balma Musa Part 1, you were in the aggressive section of the map. Mm-hmm. And you were fighting against an enemy that was more entrenched. In this one, you start on the other side of the map, so there's more cover and such, and more choke points heading towards you. And this was kind of the beginning of my turtling strategy, which I would do, which was not always like, was always kind of boring, but like I ended up doing it for important, let them come to me because they will naturally separate a little bit so I can fight them one at a time as opposed to just like throwing my fastest units into the grinder.
Yeah, trying to catch them where they are and arrest them there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happens when you decide to kill them is like Katua, she is mortified, but she will stick with you no matter what. Vice, he does not believe that this is the path that the Wallister are going to take. Like there's nothing down here for this. Why would you kill Wallister to try and save them? And so he decides to turn and he abandons you. Lady Ravnus, takes a little bit more of an aggressive role in this. And she decides, hey, I need to kill you for what you've done. Leonard goes in and he's the one who actually does the deed, but not before making some really shitty comments about the fact that Lady Ravnus is of mixed blood. That's weird. Yeah, that she is half Wallister, half Galgastani, and basically immediately like uses that to justify why she would not go along with the plan, or to condemn her for it, saying, just really shitty things about the coincidence of her birth, right? So
real quick, let me put a pin in that. Sorry to cut you off. It's worth noting for people who are playing this from the outside that this is not a Rashomon thing where you are seeing the same events and it is merely the perspectives that are different. Characters change their personality based on your choices. Right. So Leonard, in my version, was the enemy, but was like the noble version of the enemy and was like really against that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, every time I talked to him, he was like, we actually, there's, the only thing separating us from our enemy is blood, but we have to end the war. Mm-hmm. This is the most. There's no racism or anything. Yeah. And Vice turned into a weird sniveling monster. Like they literally just change into different people. It's not a thing where it's like I have a pinhole view into this, and if I saw the whole picture, their actions would make sense.
Yeah, I would see different justifications to understand why they did this differently. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that. They just turn into different people.
Right. So like for me, like, you end up siding with Leonard, he immediately turns into an usurper and like wants to put you in command so he can control you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not great.
It's interesting. Like, yeah, it's like Leonard is a good person when he's your enemy. Mm-hmm. He's a bad person when he's your friend. Yeah. Vice is a good person when he's your enemy. He's a bad person when he's your friend.
Right. Like for
Actually,
this.
Vice is never your friend.
Vice is never your friend. He kind of is always your enemy, but in your case, in the Chaos Path, like he goes and becomes bloodthirsty. In the Law Path, like he matures like instantly. Like he goes and works for the Liberation Front. Like he is, ends up actually being like really upright and standing against you in kind of like a principled way. So it's like a little bit more similar to the Dela to Ramza, kind of split.
Yeah.
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 But yeah, the version of the battle that they put you in here is, I found this to be very difficult, primarily because Ravnus, was in play. She starts out like right next to you, and will start attacking your people. If you want to recruit her, you have to keep her alive. Like I knew this, I saw this ahead of time. So I was like, all right, here's what you have to do. That stops you from being able to turtle. But because you can't just wait for the enemies to come down the hill and get you, because Ravnus is there and you want to, there's only so much you can do with status effects to keep her at bay. So like my first try, I was like, I'll take the side roads. No, that just bottlenecked me. The enemy got on top of roofs and, shot us like fish in the barrel. And in the second one, it was like, no, we need to like basically run past Ravnus on the main path to get up here. And by all means, keep the enemies off of the rooftops. So that they don't have that advantage, because they already start out uphill from you, and have that kind of first mover go. This was, it felt like a good climactic battle.
Yeah. A little bit of an anticlimax in the chaos route, because I didn't have a hero unit I was fighting against.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. And if in trying to keep the hero units alive was something I'd given up on, alarmingly quick in my playthrough of this, just because I like read about them and I was like, I'm not going to end up doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's going to be our first episode on Tactics Ogre, Let Us Cling Together. We'll be talking about our respective experiences for Chapter 2 and 3. Next time, that will be, by definition, a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Than this. We won't have the generalities, and because we're technically covering like double the amount of content that we'd be, I think we have to keep a real good clip.
Agreed. Yeah. But, so we're going to be doing chapters 2 and 3 and then getting together for 4. So like 2 and 3 are going to be like book reports kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. But not necessarily super zoomed in, because if we sit down and if we talk about every single line of dialogue and every single battle in those, we'll be here for 3 episodes.
Right.
This, and that's more than we have budgeted for it. But yeah, no generalities. No other generalities will come out. Like I was just thinking about like skills actually improve as well. Skills have ranks. You don't really know which ones do, but some skills actually get better, and some skills unlock more powerful versions. It's real weird. Like a recruit, or like the MP one, the one that changes your TP into MP. Just gets better the more you use it. Whereas knockback goes from 25% chance to 50% chance.
Yeah.
So there's little bits like that'll come out in the episodes. And it also, I recognize this episode has been very negative. The plot stuff is really cool. The actual like ending, I think the last encounter in this game is really good. The final fight is real good. Like there are things that are good about it.
Yeah.
So I'll save kind of final summations for the next one, but it is something that it was a really mixed experience for me.
Yeah.
Dug it, but not as much as I thought I would.
Yeah. And I'm here for the story. I am here for the scope and the tone, because it is exceedingly rare. Rare. And
rare and good. If you have things to say about Tactics Ogre, Let Us Cling Together, hit us up at duckfeed.tv/contact by the 15th of July. Also, if you have things to say about Hitman 2, 2018 2, or Mario Golf Advanced Tour.
Right. Yep. We're probably going to be throwing some just general video game golf talk into the premium section of that to spread it out. Both of us enjoy golf games, and golf games end up being it's like there are tons of like really fun indie golf games that are out there. There are lots of those. Yeah. So
I've been playing a lot of them recently.
Yeah.
Like golf has just been sounding fun. There's a cool one on Steam that I started playing called Golf It, and that one has a course. It's a mini golf game that has a course designer.
Nice.
I'm like, oh man, designing a mini golf course. That's appealing to me. But we're going to talk some sugar about what is probably on the balance my favorite sports genre video games, if you don't count skating.
Yeah.
And then also if you have things to say about August games, which are Disco Elysium and Devil May Cry, the original.
Yes. The 2003 Devil May Cry 1, not the Ninja Theory, I believe. Yes. Yeah, Ninja Theory 1.
Yeah. Hit us up by the 15th of August for that.
Yeah. If you'd like to support this show and get more content, you can go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv at $5. You get access to all of our premium episodes of this show, in addition to whole shows. Like Unfilmable, our kind of limited run series about how Lovecraft and Lovecraftian ideas and stories are adapted to visual media, film and television and such. Or you can get our Dark Souls series, Bonfireside Chat, where this summer we're kind of going in and talking about some really substantial mods for the Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3 as they go.
Yes. Yeah. It's gonna be really fun. I got cool things planned. I want to throw a big thank you to everybody who tuned in to Duckfest 2.
Yes.
Which we just wrapped up yesterday. Everybody who donated. We met and exceeded all of our goals for that in raising money for Color of Change. And that is a good cause. And we really appreciate you allowing us to do that and for helping out.
Yeah. And for tuning in and participating in the chat. The energy, as always, was incredibly good. It was very hard not to just watch the chat because people in the chat are very funny.
Yeah.
So, it was a huge success. The event had to be compromised, because of the, pandemic, which is unfortunate, but, I'm happy that even this compromise ended up being a very good time.
Yes. Yeah. It was awesome.
Yeah.
So looking forward, to doing that, again.
Yes.
In the future, hopefully in person, but this gave me kind of hope that if we can't do that in person, because who even knows?
Yeah, none of us.
It'll still be good and fun.
Yeah.
So, and then patreon.com/DuckFeedTV, ratings and reviews, all those things are useful, as you know.
Yeah. But until next time, watch out for Vice.
Yeah, I gotta watch out for Vice.
Sounds like a real piece of shit.
The jerk portraits in this game are very funny. Vice's jerk portrait is the best one.
I went to the Tactics Ogre wiki to see if I could find it because I really want to, but no dice there just yet.
He's angry boy.
Computer, show me a picture of Vice snarling.